Good morning, I'm Mike Graham, he's Mike Parry, you're listening to the Two Mikes on Talk Sport. It's just 2 days until the Champions League final and already it's all kicking off in Europe, hot on the heels of Manchester City declaring they were buying up all the best talent in the world. Romelu Lukaku has been valued at £100 million by Everton. Meanwhile, David De Gea and Eden Hazard are being hunted by Real Madrid for a joint figure of £160 million. Has the world officially gone mad? We knew this would happen, we said this would happen, we're going to now get Porky to explain all of it and what's going to happen next. 08717 223344. Also coming up on the show, we'll be talking goat yoga, the Battle of Medway, and the 50th anniversary of the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper. You're listening to the Two Mikes with me, Mike Graham, and Mike Parry on Talk Sport. This is Talk Sport. We are the Two Mikes, and I'm delighted to say it's time to say a very good morning to Mr. Mike, a Porky, a Parry. A very good morning to you, Mr. Parry.
And a very good morning to you, Mike, on what is our last official late show for quite some time.
Quite some time. We will be occasionally returning, of course, won't we, due to the cricket and the general election and that kind of thing.
That's right. We have some live cricket, so we'll, without wanting to deprive the audience of our presence, we will be doing a slot before the cricket.
Yes.
And, of course, on general election night, which is just a week tomorrow, June the 8th.
June the 8th.
We will, in fact, be doing a daytime show, an overnight show for the election.
Right.
And
have you noticed that you've turned into a man that just talks about what we're going to be doing?
Yeah, well, hang on. A mid-morning show the following morning. So that is all by public demand.
Yes, indeed it is.
So it's great. Now,
we're very much looking forward to that.
We're looking forward to it enormously.
Yeah.
Now,
there's a lot of very important things to discuss tonight.
The transfers.
Yeah, not least the transfers.
Now, I was trying to tell the couple of numbskulls who sit in this studio before we do about the phony war, but they didn't get it. At the moment, we're in the phony war, right?
Yes. The phony war. If you call it something else, I think that's what confused people.
Well, I call it the false war, because that's what it was known amongst academics, but to the general people of Britain,
I've seen a couple of tweets
war.
That people said it was known as the phony war. That's why nobody knew what you were talking about.
It was known as the phony war to the working classes. It was known as the false war to the academics who were planning the war strategy. You see what I mean? And
you're a man of the people, so you're going to call it the phony war.
I'm going to call it the phony war now, because we wanted a phony stroke false war, because we didn't have any Spitfires, and we needed at least 6 months to a year to build some Spitfire squadrons, so we could shoot down the Messerschmitts that were coming over to protect the German bombers who were trying to wipe out our RAF station.
What about Eden Hazard going to Real Madrid, though?
What's that?
About the Second World War.
What's that got to do with
the Second World War was a very long time ago.
Oh, yes, but I was using the analogy, you see, because the analogy is the way that people understand modern-day problems compared with historical problems, okay?
All right.
So, what I was going to say is, what we are in now is we are in the sort of... If you've got two boxers in the ring, they've got their fists up just under their chin, but they're standing in opposite corners, and they haven't quite decided when they're going to meet in the middle. You see what I mean?
So it's before the fight's actually started, then?
Yeah, this is...
Before the bell's gone?
No, the bell's gone.
Bell's gone? Why are they standing in the corners?
Because the fighting hasn't started yet,
really?
You see. And this is what's happening in the transfer market. Now, Everton are a very interesting case.
Yes.
Because Everton have a distinguished history in modern football of saying that player's not for sale and that player's not for sale.
And
I'm talking about... No, they didn't, you see, with John Stones. They didn't.
Well, they did in the end, though, didn't they?
Well, of course they did in the end, because they wanted to get rid of John Stones. He was an asset.
So he was for sale?
No, he wasn't for sale.
Well, he wasn't for sale for Chelsea, but he was for sale later.
No. In that transfer window, they asked 8 times, what about, and they said he's not for sale. They didn't buckle or give in. He played another season for Everton. No problem at all. He wasn't for sale, okay?
Money can't buy me stones, I seem to remember you saying.
Money can't buy me stones.
But then money could buy me stones.
No, you see...
But he could.
Why are you being so thick about this?
Well, I'm not. I'm just saying
when Everton said he's not for sale in a transfer window...
But then he was sold the next time around.
No, Ronaldo was sold the next time round.
Yes.
Players go because football's a transient business.
Yes, it is.
But in that transfer window, that long transfer window, everybody expected Everton to say he's not for sale at the start of the window,
right.
So the price would go up, and at the end of the window they would sell him. But they didn't. Right. He was not for sale.
Okay.
Right.
Or they didn't... Well, in fact, they didn't get enough money offered for him, maybe.
No, he wasn't for sale because he was part of the strategy of the club at the time.
Right.
It was David Moyes' last season.
Yeah.
Now, what I'm saying is...
David Moyes left.
Yes.
And then he was no longer part of the strategy.
He wasn't. And Ronald Koeman came in, and that was a change of strategy. Now, at the moment...
Sorry, can I just point out to Neil has said, by the way, in Derbyshire, the election's a week today, not a week tomorrow, Porky.
Yes, I know. But when I was talking, I was still in Wednesday night mode.
And I think that's perfectly acceptable.
Thank you.
So, Neil, don't be so horrible.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for
that. But thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah.
That's very good of you. Now you can go back to bed.
No one to go back to bed. You want to listen to the show.
You probably work in a hay wain or something.
Right, a hay wain? What, in Derbyshire?
Yeah.
Maybe he's working on Elton John's concert there.
Yeah, or maybe...
at the cricket ground.
Maybe he's a member of the Peak District Mountain Rescue Team, and
possibly,
yeah, quite possibly, and his head's been misshapen from falling off mountains or something like that.
You can never be sure, but at least he knows what day it is.
Yeah, it is. That's right. Yeah,
which is always good.
Now, what I was going to say is, Everton now said £100 million or nothing for Lukaku.
Yeah.
And that's
which is crazy, isn't it?
It's a brilliant strategy because everybody's now, these very, very smart people who talk a good story saying, he's not worth 100 million. Well, in that case, it's a brilliant strategy. Sorry?
Who's that meant to be?
Well, it's meant to be the great unwashed and the unknowledgeable.
The great unwashed with a Cockney accent.
No. And the situation now is that Everton, I believe, will stick to that strategy, 100 million or nothing.
Yeah.
And people won't offer 100 million for Lukaku. So I think it's a brilliant strategy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what about this word coup-fei-fei, which is the word that is on everybody's lips? Now, this is a word that was published by Donald Trump on his POTUS Twitter account.
Yes.
Right? P-O-T-U-S, you know what that means, don't you? President of the United States of America.
Yes.
And by mistake, he did what you would do, or I would do, and he got a word or a letter wrong, right? And instead of writing a word that he meant to write, he ended up writing a word that was spelt capital C-O-V-F-E-F-E.
Hang on, spell that again.
C-O-V-F-E-F-E.
Yeah, Kofafi.
Now, I'm sure lots of people have tried to do this. You might want to try it now. Try and write that word in and see what it auto-corrects to. Because it might be...
And what does it auto-correct
I don't know. I haven't tried.
Haven't you tried it?
No, I haven't.
Why don't you try it?
Well, because I'm in the middle of doing a radio show.
Yeah, well, you've got two devices in front of you.
Well, I've got two devices.
I can do it now.
Well, why don't you do it now while I'm talking to you?
I'll do it now.
Why don't you type in C-O-V-F-E-F-E and see what it auto-corrects to?
Okay.
That doesn't always mean that it will auto-correct to what the
Now, the problem is, I don't
was.
think my auto-correct is switched on.
Well, then switch it on.
I don't know how to switch it on.
Well, that's no good then.
No, I know. Yeah.
But here's what Donald Trump has done, and this is why I sometimes call you the Donald Trump of Talk Sport.
Right.
Because rather than just admitting that he made a mistake and he tweeted out a word that doesn't exist, his people have spent the entire day saying everybody knows what the president meant.
Yes.
So it's almost become like the emperor's new clothes.
Yes.
So, of course, all the journalists that don't like Donald Trump have been making fun of him. Comedians have been making fun of him. People have been doing things like, the magic words have been spoken. The Dark Lord has ordered us to go into the night and start taking over countries. Yeah. I mean, it's all been very funny throughout the course of the last sort of few hours.
Yeah.
But instead of just admitting that he's wrong, this is the result. Because I think that's what you would do. Because you would always say, no, I knew exactly what I meant.
Yes, or he could have withdrawn the tweet instantly. And,
well, he could have done.
And just said, look, sorry. I mean, do you remember one time, Gorgeous George Galloway, who was a former colleague of ours.
Former colleague,
exceptionally upstanding man, man for whom I have a great deal of respect.
I'm not sure if he's running for anything in this election.
Yeah, I don't think he is, but he won, didn't he, a constituency. And it was for, what was his party called?
Respect, yes.
Respect, yeah. And he won the constituency, didn't he? It was somewhere in the...
It was up in Bradford.
Well,
do you mean that one or Tower Hamlets?
No, I mean the one up in Bradford or wherever it was.
Yeah.
Because when he put the first tweet out to say a big thanks to the people of, he got the wrong town.
Oh yes, that's right.
Remember?
I do remember
that. And of course he blamed that immediately on corrective text. Which, of course, we accept as being the problem.
Indeed, absolutely
so
right.
So, this could have been the case with the El Presidente.
Yes, exactly right. Now, here's one from somebody called Twitter Moments, right? They put this out because this is trending. The mystery of Trump's co-fei-fei. To quote the president's midnight pondering, despite the constant negative press, co-fei-fei. So it's become just this word now that people are just uttering.
Co-fei-fei.
Co-fei-fei.
I think he's invented a word that will stick with us now for 100 years.
Well, I think what he's done is he's just made a mistake. Instead of admitting it's a mistake, he's just left it out there.
Yeah.
So now people are going, could it be an acronym?
Yeah.
Could it stand for something?
Yeah.
Could it be short for something? Yeah. Could it be three words being sort of spliced together?
Have you any idea why Ronald Reagan was called the Gipper?
Yes, because it was part of an old movie that he was in.
That's right,
where they said, win one for the Gipper.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And it was some ridiculous football movie, I believe, in which he was sort of...
He was a leatherhead, wasn't he?
Yeah, it was a leatherhead, and I think he was a running back of some description.
That's right, yeah.
And one of the words that was said was, winning one for the Gipper. And nobody really knew what it meant.
No, that's right, but he was always known...
People would go, win one for the Gipper,
that's right, yeah. But after that, he was always known as the Gipper.
Yeah.
So I wonder whether old,
it seems obvious to me.
President Trump will be known in future as, co-fei-fei.
Co-fei-fei. I mean, even the Associated Press, the esteemed news organisation, has actually put out a pronunciation guide for co-fei-fei.
And how do they say it?
They say coup-fei-fei, actually, C-U-V, Couve-Fey.
Couve-Fey.
Couve-Fey. What does it mean?
What does it mean? Couve-Fey. It's got the same stanza as Lukaku.
Yeah.
Couve-Fey.
Yeah.
Lukaku.
And here's one.
Couve-Fey is after you.
And here's one from Sean Spicer, which is being liberally quoted around Twitter as well, in which it says the president and a small group of people know what he meant.
Yeah, right.
And this is his press secretary.
Well, hang on. In that case, this secret conversation between the president and 4 or 5 other people on Earth should be shared with the other 5 billion.
Well, yeah, I think the Sean Spicer was making fun of it.
Yes, I think he was. Yeah.
But this is what happens when you don't actually have the ability to admit when you're wrong.
Yes.
And it gets carried away. Absolute madness. Now we'll talk some more about the football transfer business because it has gone a bit mad.
We certainly will.
We'll also be talking to Steve Marinucci coming up, who's a Beatles expert, believe it or not.
Yes.
He's going to be telling us about the 50th anniversary of Sgt. Pepper.
Yes, that's right.
He might have a few extra stories for us. We're going to talk to Lainey Morse later on about goat yoga.
Goat yoga, I know, yeah. That's something I introduced to this show a week ago.
That's true, absolutely right. We've now got the inventor of it. We've got the inventor of it. And also Rebecca Rideall is coming back. You might remember her. She's a historian who talked to us about the plague many months ago.
Plague?
She now wants to talk to us about the anniversary of the Battle of Medway.
Oh, excellent, good.
Which is very exciting
This is very exciting
It's all about the Dutch. You can learn a lot on this show tonight.
Well, hang on. The Battle of Medway was nothing to do with the Dutch.
Yeah, no, this is not the Battle of Medway that you're thinking of from the Second World War.
Oh.
This is another Battle of Medway.
The
original Battle of Medway from 350 years ago.
Really?
Yes, and you'll like it because it's all about...
But not in the Medway in the South Pacific.
No, in the Medway off the coast of Kent.
That's what I mean. Yeah, like where Maidstone is.
Yeah, the Medway towns.
Medway towns,
yeah.
Excellent.
This is all about your love of the British Navy.
Excellent.
I thought you'd enjoy it.
Great.
This is Talk Sport.
Yes.
This is Talk Sport. We are the two mics, and of course, we've got loads going on. We'll be telling you what's going on in the papers. We'll give you a little snapshot of the last 24 hours in the political world. There was a debate last night that went out on the BBC with everybody apart from Theresa May. A lot of people said that she should have been there. I got a tweet here from Chris who says, "Could you please point out to Porky that Martinez was in charge, not Moyes, during the Stones'
of course it was.
Gate."
Yeah, of course it was. Yeah.
But seriously, let's go back to that for a moment because Lukaku at 100 million.
Yes.
I mean, given the fact that yesterday we were reporting Manchester City saying that we're going to spend 300 million quid, that we are going to trawl the world for the greatest talent in the world.
Yep.
I mean, I suppose it's not impossible to think that somebody might want to pay 100 million quid for Lukaku.
Yeah, it might do. Market forces might. Great strikers are in very, very short supply. That's why there's always a premium price. That's why Griezmann's going to cause so much interest over the
and he seems to be sort of flip-flopping a bit, Griezmann.
Well, I think he's put his own price up. 1 minute he's saying there's a 60% chance I'm going to Manchester United. The next he's saying I've spoken to El Presidente and I'm very happy here.
Yeah.
So you better offer me a bit more money than you were thinking of offering me for me to come away.
Yes.
It's a bit of negotiation through his agent, isn't it? Because he's got that super agent who did Pogba, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has. I think the guy Mila Raiola, is it?
Raiola, or whatever his name is. That's right. Yeah, and so I think that's the way it works. But at the end of the day, in the great mix of things, you're absolutely right. I saw the Manchester City owner today, and I didn't realise it was the owner to start off with because he was immaculately dressed in a suit and all that.
And also we assume it's Sheikh Mansour. This was a different guy, wasn't it?
Oh, this is a different guy. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he was. But anyway, he's from the Middle East and very successful businessman.
Yeah,
and he was talking there in perfect English, saying, "Well, never mind about a double, never mind about a treble.
Yeah.
We're greedy. We'll have a quadruple next season. Thank you very much indeed."
But we've heard all that before. I remember Roberto Mancini said they wanted to win 4 titles.
Yes.
And they didn't, I think, win more than 1.
Yeah, I think, but when the owner says it, it's a bit more daunting for the manager because if the owner's expectations are a quadruple harvesting of trophies, then you've got to start worrying about how much you're going to win next season.
Right, exactly.
Without a shadow of a doubt.
Now, I've got a great tweet here from Kevin who says he's listening in Brekkuskogar. You know where that is?
Brekkuskogar. Is that in Scandinavia?
It's in Iceland.
Iceland, wow, love it, yeah.
And he says it's still daylight at midnight.
Wow, that's fantastic.
And he says, greetings from an exiled Scot.
Has he sent a picture?
He has.
And is that a contemporary picture this time of night?
Yeah, it's this time of night. It's like absolutely broad daylight.
That's great. Well, the reason why...
midnight.
The reason why the government in this country messed around with the changing the hour, the clock and the hour and all that during the Second World War was so that Scottish farmers could stay out in the fields till 11 o'clock at night.
Yes.
Because Scotland became the breadbasket of Britain.
Yeah.
Because, of course, the supplies of oil being cut off across the Atlantic meant that Scotland, who were getting some of their oil from Scandinavia, had a better chance at operating tractors.
Fields,
That's right, yeah.
And, of course, it's been kept because the idea is that it's going to supposedly allow children to be able to go to school where it is not dark. But the problem with living in Scotland, as I did for many years, is that basically you can go to work and come back from work and never see daylight.
Well, that happens in the north of England in the winter, definitely. You get up and you go to work at 6:30, 7 o'clock, and you leave at 4:35. You're in total darkness.
Yeah, you never see the sunlight.
But it didn't used to bother me, because when I was a young reporter, I used to spend all my time after work in the pub anyway.
Yeah.
So it didn't really matter if it was summer or winter.
Yeah, but if you don't see any daylight during the course of the day, I mean, you might have gone out in it as well. I mean, to be fair.
Yes.
So you would have probably been in and out of the office. So
but I mean, the office was next door to the pub, so you went through one door.
No, but I mean, did you not have to go out and actually do any proper work, like actually go out and report on things?
Well, you did, of course, yeah. You went out and did things.
Or did you just go to the pub all the time?
No. I did lots of jobs, but the jobs weren't terribly important. There were things like covering, somebody's steam fair collection or something like that. You know what I mean? Steam engine, the steam engine collection or something like that. You know what I mean? Weren't challenging jobs, really.
No. You treat those people with utter disdain?
Well, no. In those days,
Shadows.
I wasn't quite as sort of
horrible.
No, I hadn't. No, I hadn't succeeded to the sort of winning post I now stand at in life. You know what I mean? And
is that where you stand?
Yeah.
You stand at the winning post. I have no idea.
So, yeah.
Next time I lose track of you, I'll just come and look for you at the winning post.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I used to think that it was quite cute, really, to go to the Bromfield Arms in Hoole in Chester as the deputy sports editor and look at a load of planks who'd spent all day on a riverbank fishing and then present one of them with the cup for the Chester Chronicle fishing prize, And then
I didn't know the deputy sports editor.
Yeah, it was, Then we took a picture of us all and I was right in the middle because I was the most important person in the room, even though I was 19.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's why you have this terrible view of the world, isn't it? Because you were given a figure... a reasonable level of responsibility too early. Tracy says the best translation for Koi Fefe I've seen doing the rounds is it's Russian for I resign. But obviously not, because I don't think he has resigned.
Yeah, Kufefe, man, Kufefe.
Kufefe.
Yeah, Kufefe, man, Kufefe.
Leary says, Porky, you're thinking about the Battle of Midway. You plank.
Hey?
The Battle of Midway.
Yes, I am, actually.
Not Medway.
No, it's Midway. You're
Battle of Midway
right.
is the one that took place in the Second World War.
That's absolutely
which was
true.
a movie. And the Battle of Medway, in fact, is the one that took place, as we know.
400 years ago.
Involving the Dutch.
On the River Medway, which is down near Maidstone.
Yeah.
And in fact, a very important naval base there at Chatham.
Yes.
It served Chatham at one time.
It certainly is. Yes. Now, Lady Laura says, howdy doody, looking forward to the show next week. And Lukaku, 100 million quid. What is Mike Parry on?
Well, listen, you can laugh if you want, but it wasn't my figure. It's the figure that the club have put on the head of Lukaku.
Yes.
And, they're good at doing these things. And Mr. Mashiri, who's our new major shareholder and owner of the club, is a very smart cookie.
But if he says, let's make some money out of this, we don't really want him to go, but if he is going to go, let's make some money.
Yes.
Is there not sort of there's a balance, isn't there? There's
Without
an amount of money. Because you might want, say, 90 million, which would be very handy.
Yeah.
But if you put it to 100 million, you might not get it.
Well, I'm sure Mr. Mashira worked that out. We paid 28 million for him.
Right.
And everybody thought that was a real gamble because it was a record fee Everton had ever paid for a player.
That was to Chelsea, right?
That was Chelsea because we had him on loan at first and then convinced him to come and stay full time. 28 million was a gamble if he hadn't scored any goals. But of course, he's been fantastic. But I was listening to, a national newspaper reporter earlier on TalkSport who was full of opinions.
A national newspaper reporter?
Yeah.
You don't want to give his name?
No, I don't know. And
why is that?
Well, because these people can sometimes be rather gobby, mouthy,
gobby,
and don't.
Well, that's why they're invited onto the radio, surely.
Yes, well, providing they're talking, not talking gibberish. And it was.
I've been quite vitriolic tonight about some of your former colleagues.
It was. Everybody knows that Lukaku's not worth 100 million. You know what I mean?
Was this another Cockney?
No. That was just a man of the people type voice.
Yeah, okay.
And so therefore. Those guys who think that they run the world sports-wise are already branding Lukaku as an under £100 million player.
Well, he doesn't strike you as a guy who's going to break the record of any footballer ever, does he?
Doesn't he?
He's not that good.
Well, he's very, very good.
Well, he's okay, you would say, but I mean, I don't think you would think that he would be the leading, most expensive footballer of all time. Martin says Parry could turn this Confefe into Everton.
Yeah, what do you mean?
I don't know.
Everton.
And Alan says Confefe auto corrects to Confed.
Confed.
Or it could be Trump's Pyongyang.
Pyongyang.
I don't think it also corrects to Pyongyang.
No, Confed would be Confederation.
Yeah, that wouldn't be right.
That'd be Confederation of States or something like that. You know what
William
I mean?
says, I wonder how many people mocking Donald Trump's typing error made typing errors in their tweets mocking him.
Yeah, well, exactly.
I would imagine quite substantial.
Exactly. It's very easy to make typing errors these days. The phones are so small, people's fingers are getting bigger, and the combination of trying to put the two together sometimes results in desperate errors.
Well, I was saying to somebody last night, actually, I wonder whether, you know how everybody always makes a big thing about Donald Trump tweets at 3 o'clock in the morning?
Yes.
I wonder whether he just times the tweets to go out at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Could do.
And he writes them beforehand.
Yeah, maybe.
And he doesn't check them properly.
Maybe.
You know?
You'd think he'd have some sort of checking procedure, either electronically or somebody who actually edits and audits, I suppose, his output from his own machine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because that was a POTUS one, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
So isn't there an official guardian of the POTUS?
Well, there's a
like
POTUS one, and there's Donald Trump himself.
Yes, I know. Yeah, but the POTUS one,
having said that, I think it might have been his own one. It might have been Donald Trump.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
Trump may have meant press coverage, not cold fei, says Ali, making this a huge non-story.
Yeah.
Or was the lifelong teetotal bladderated? Yeah. Better story. Well, he doesn't drink, so he definitely wasn't bladderated.
No, that's right.
And unfortunately, Ali, even if it was for some reason meant to say press coverage, it doesn't matter because the fact that the president has put out a tweet that's got something wrong in it,
it's giving him mega
be
coverage.
A story.
Yes, that's right.
Bound to be a story.
Absolutely.
What else would it be?
What else would it be? I totally agree.
Exactly.
But too many people are too quick to jump on the mistakes that others make.
It's true.
And that to me is a sign of weakness. I very, very rarely, if somebody sends me a tweet, even if they're attacking me, right?
Yeah.
And they've made a terrible spelling mistake, or more usually, because the education system in this country has crumbled to almost nothing, more usually they make a grammatical error, so they will use the wrong spelling of their, There instead of Their.
Yeah. I have to say, by the way, that we were caught hoist by our own petard, because our third episode of the On the Record podcast, which is available on iTunes and all other Android devices, was had a spelling of "there" wrong.
Did it?
Yeah.
Who wrote that?
Well, it was put by the people that put the podcast.
Oh, I see. So have we...
I don't know if it's been corrected. I'm not sure if it can be.
Right.
If you look on the iTunes page, it's spelled incorrectly.
Well, that's not good.
It's not. You may have to have a word with someone.
Disciplinary proceedings will follow.
Yeah, they will indeed.
Without a shadow of a doubt.
Coming up, of course...
I'm not having myself held up to ridicule like that.
No, you can't have yourself held up to ridicule. That would be wrong. Steve Marinucci's going to join us soon. He's a Beatles expert, writer and author. He's going to tell us about the 50th anniversary of Sgt. Pepper. This is TalkSport.
Days.
Centenarian.
But that will come later, okay.
I'm happy to report to you, by the way, I've just checked on the old iTunes charts.
Yes.
And the THEIR incorrect spelling has been corrected.
Yes.
So I'm very happy to say that we do not any longer have the wrong spelling of there.
Well done. Did you point it out to anybody?
No, I didn't.
Well, in that case, we've got some very efficient people working on our websites, and I want to thank the person who did it. It's good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Indeed. So we should also mention that twomics.co.uk is our website. Go there and find all sorts of delights.
Yes.
Including a place to sign up to the live stream of our show in New York, which is coming up in September. Yeah. And, of course, very shortly, very, very shortly, we've been saying this for a while, but I'm sure it's going to be very soon, actually buy tickets for the whole event, if you wish.
That's right.
So actually go to New York.
That's right. Absolutely. The situation regarding Sgt. Pepper's is that it was released on this day, 1967, June the 1st.
Right.
Incredible.
Hence the 50th anniversary.
Yes. In a recent poll of the best LPs ever, which we ran through the other night, if you remember.
Yes.
You'll remember that Sgt. Pepper's was voted as the number one LP of all time.
I don't remember that, actually. But, I mean, I do remember the chart that we did.
Yes.
And what was the reason for that? Do you remember?
What?
Why Sgt. Pepper was voted number one? It wasn't because of sales, was it? It was just because of other reasons. Right?
It was voted by a board of cultural experts and all that kind of stuff as the most important LP ever made. Even though I've read dozens of pieces since from people who said it wasn't even the best Beatles LP.
Well, I wonder if it was because I'm not sure. I mean, you'd have to say the White Album was probably a better album.
Well, it was for me, to be honest, but it was just so iconic. But the cover itself and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was just so iconic and it was pivotal, and it also drove the Beach Boys a bit mad. Yeah. Because Brian Wilson, who'd written all the songs on Pet Sounds, thought he'd just completed the world's greatest ever LP.
Indeed.
And then one of the executives from his record company, he'd gone to London, come back and said, I've just heard an LP called Sgt. Pepper's from the Beatles. He said, nothing will ever beat it.
Yeah.
So that was
Well,
it.
we're talking to Steve Marinucci about it coming up, and I'll give you just a few facts to be chewing over in the meantime, right? More than 700 hours were spent recording the album.
Yeah.
Can you imagine how long that is? Now, I don't know whether that means that 700 hours not necessarily kind of consecutively spent.
No. In the studio over a period of 6 months.
Over a period of 6 months by each person, I wonder, rather than all collectively, Because 700 hours seems an awfully long time.
With the Beatles, or Please Please Me, one of the first LPs, it was done in a day.
Yeah. I'm not surprised.
It was done in a day because they did 6 tracks on each side. That was 12 tracks, right?
Yeah.
Each were 3 minutes. And they just did 2 takes on each track. And then George Martin just picked the best version and just stuck it on the LP.
Right.
And of course, some of them weren't even Beatles songs.
Because I guess
covers.
then the speed was of the essence,
yes,
right?
That's
you
right.
didn't want to stand around waiting. Mae West initially refused to have her image on the cover, but relented after the Beatles personally wrote her a letter asking for her permission.
Each one of the Beatles, actually. Not just, from the group. Each one had to write her a letter individually.
Yeah. Amongst the people considered for the art on the cover... Right,
Adolf Hitler was taken off.
Left off, right? Adolf Hitler, can you think of the 2 others?
Yeah, Gandhi and Jesus.
I got Jesus Christ and the actor Leo Gorcey.
Oh.
I don't know who he was.
I thought it was Gandhi.
Maybe Gandhi, but Gandhi's on it, isn't he?
No, I don't think he is.
Is he not?
No.
Leo Gorcey was left off because he demanded a fee of $400.
That's right, yeah.
While the BBC thought Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds was a reference to LSD, John insisted it was from a pastel drawing by his 4-year-old son, Julian.
Well, it was. And in fact, only about 2 years ago, newspaper headlines reported the death of Lucy, who was the girl upon whom the song was written.
Right, okay.
She was a classmate of Julian Lennon when Lennon lived in Weybridge in Surrey.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes, very interesting.
Raimi says this. Please, MG, not the blasted Beatles again. Well, too late, mate, because I'm afraid, just when there is a genuine reason to talk about them, we will be doing it.
Of course there's a genuine reason. Listen, one thing I want to talk to you about, right? And I've mentioned this before, but now scientists are catching up where I, first led the way. Scientists are actually saying that the whole concept of marriage will have to be looked at again because more and more people in America are reporting being married 60, 70 and even 80 years, right?
Yes.
Now, this is completely changing the way society was meant to sort of, sort itself out.
What do you mean? Because people should be not expecting to be married for as long as they were expecting to be.
It's going to become unnatural to be married to somebody for 100 years, which could happen, within 30 years. People born today can expect perhaps to live to 120.
Right.
Just imagine that.
That is a long time.
Just imagine that.
That means that basically as I'm approaching 60, because I'm like 4 years away from 60, that would only be halfway through my life.
That's right.
That's bonkers.
Well, it's gonna happen. I mean, your boys are now like sort of teenagers.
Yeah, they're about to become teenagers.
Right? So that's fine. But the generation after them will live to the age of 120. Now, if you live to the age of 120 and you get married in your 20s, you could be married 100 years, because you might die at 123 or something like that. It is a shocking thought. We have to look out with these very long lives whether we do want to be together for 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 or even 100 years, says Professor Harper, who is an expert on these things.
Is he?
Yes.
Is he in this country, Professor Harper?
It's a lady, and she's an Oxford professor.
Is she?
And we should you should completely be rethinking the institution of marriage. Professor Sarah Harper, okay?
Because the problem with marriage, right, is a lot of people get married because they want to start a family.
Yes.
A lot of people get married because they want to have children.
Yes.
Now, unless the age at which women can conceive and bear children expands, which it hasn't really done, even though there are scientific reasons why you can do it sort of artificially, then that's not really going to change very much about marriage. Because, for example, if you get married in your 20s, you might expect to have children. But when the woman in the marriage reaches the age of, say, 45, she's not really going to want any more children.
No, that's right.
So if the marriage comes to an end, you're saying that they should then get married to someone who doesn't want children.
Well, what Professor Harper is saying is all sorts of sociological problems are going to arise. And, the longer people are married together, the more chance there is of them falling out and getting bored with each other. So we should all maybe face up to the idea that 2 marriages in every lifetime will become the norm.
Maybe.
Now, the other thing she says is that children who previously, go back 50 years or 60 years, post-war children, they could have expected to actually got a sort of midlife boost in their finances from the parents dying and them inheriting their parents' home.
Possibly.
She said, you're going to have to get used to the idea that children born today could be in their 80s before they inherit the money from their parents.
Yeah, absolutely.
And their whole life has come and gone. They're retired themselves. They don't need it. What do you do with the money then? And, she said...
And you can't really sort of do anything on the basis that you're going to inherit money when you're 80, can you?
Yeah, no, you can't. No.
I mean, if you went to a bank, say, when you were 45 and said, look, I'm going to inherit all this money.
Yes.
But in 35 years, they'd go, well, so what?
That's right.
We don't care.
Absolutely. The other problem is that, if you get into good jobs these days, or if you work in the public sector, like the police force, and if you got into the police early and did your maximum time, you can actually retire in your early 50s from the police force, having completed 30 years and got a full pension. Now, if you're going to live to 120, it means people in future will be retired for longer than they've been.
Well, that's the problem.
I mean that's already happening. Yeah. People being retired long they're working, but you retired longer than the whole of your previous life since childhood. You see what I mean?
That's mad, isn't it?
Because if
but also like the two marriages you say for example, people stay married for 20 years. Yeah, get married at 25. They get divorced at 45. Yeah. They get remarried at 50.
Yes,
and live. That's for another 70 years to go. Yeah, their first marriage was only 20 years.
That's right. Absolutely. And the other thing is, you could quite realistically have 3 families, because in your 20s you can have a family, you can have a family in your 40s and 50s, and increasingly men are fathering children in their 60s and their early 70s.
Yes. Although that's not particularly a great idea for most people.
No, it's not a great idea, but it happens.
It's happening,
and it is happening.
Yeah, but it's happening more for sort of the very wealthy and the sort of rock stars and people like that.
Well,
I don't know too many ordinary 65-year-olds who have kids.
That guy from the BBC, the World Affairs editor, John Simpson, he had a child at 71 or 72, I think so.
John Humphreys has had one quite recently as well.
Has he?
The Radio 4 guy.
Radio 4 guy who drives around on a tractor on his farm in Wales.
Yes.
Yes, he used to.
He's got quite a young child.
So he got up one morning, it was so cold that the petrol had frozen. He took a hammer to the tractor, walked out and never went back. Well, you wouldn't, would you?
Well, yeah, but I mean, you'd have to regard both John Simpson and John Humphreys as kind of slightly media types. They're not really ordinary people, are they? Yeah. They've got a reasonable amount of money. Yeah, sure. They're reasonably well kind of, cosseted in life. They don't have to worry too much. But there's not many ordinary people, ordinary working people at the age of 65 meeting some 28-year-old and getting married and having a kid.
True.
Is what I'm saying.
True. I mean, the point is, we've all got to try and work out what to do with our lives, because
I don't really want to live to be 120, to be honest.
I don't, and I don't want to retire. So, if I live to 120, I'm going to be knocking on the door here saying, look, I'll come and read the news for you or something when I'm 120.
What do you think they're going to say?
Probably push off, I would think, or something like that.
I think some of the words to that effect would probably be... Because don't forget, the guy that would be running the place would not
be
actually...
about 28.
Would not have been born yet.
No, that's right, yeah. No, that's
so, I mean, in about 25 years, the guy that will be telling you to push off will be born, who will then say, no, actually, thanks very much, Mr. Parry. Yeah, you're a great character, but,
right.
We don't really want you stultifying and stumbling and bumbling over the news.
Yeah, can you imagine?
You're too old.
If I was still here at 120, I'd still be talking about the Beatles, which would have been about 100 years earlier.
Yeah.
Amazing.
It'd be awful, actually.
Yeah, it would, yeah.
But I would be the same. I mean, I suspect I will go mad long before that.
Yes.
So luckily for me, and possibly everybody else.
Hey, listen, there's a note here. It says, it was nice to hear fellow Geordie...
So, excuse me, I was in the middle of talking about my medical state.
What did you say?
What do you mean, what did I say?
What were you
I was
saying?
in the middle of talking.
Talking about what?
I talking about me.
Why were you talking about your medical state? We weren't talking about health.
Yeah, we were, because I was saying I don't think I'll reach 120, because whether I live that long or not, I will have gone mad long before that. Right. Given that my father went mad. Yes. Right? Yeah. And his mother, I think, went mad. Yes. Although people say dementia may not be in any way hereditary.
Well, I think signs of madness are creeping
out.
Well,
they could be. Yeah. They could be. So, I mean, you won't have to worry about me turning up when I'm 120 no, excuse me, can I read the news?
No, that's right.
I wonder what the news is.
Well, your work ethic's not as good as mine anyway, so it won't happen, don't worry. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I have to say that the reason I've gone mad is because I've been working with you for so bloody long. Yes. This is Talk Sport. This is Talk Sport. We are the Two Mics. Coming up, we will be talking about the Sgt. Pepper celebration. It is, of course, 50 years since the release of Sgt. Pepper, the album. We'll be talking to Steve Marinucci, who's a Beatles expert, writer and author over in California very shortly. How about this from Matt, who says, great living till you're at 120, work for about 70 years, then you're in a care home having your backside wiped then for the rest of your life.
Well, no, you're not, you see. The thing is, you won't be senile at 70 anymore. You know, that's the whole idea of what it's all about.
Yeah. And now, did you want to read one out from earlier? Because I interrupted you.
It says here, it was nice to hear fellow Geordie Carol Malone on Talk Radio today, but I couldn't help thinking she's one of Porky's ex-conquests.
Yeah, that's a shocking tweet.
That's a shocking tweet. This is a family show, and can I say, I will make no comment on that, neither confirm or deny. Carol was and is a great friend from the journalistic community in Newcastle many years ago, and I think we should leave it at that.
Yeah, I think we should. Very wise. Here's one from Becky in New Zealand, which, of course, is where all the Lions have gone. She says, with the increased life expectancy, Porky could still be working as a centenarian with the grandson of Mike Graham, MG. What do you make of that?
Well, I'm not sure
that's possible.
The time, I suppose it's possible, but it's unlikely.
I mean, I'm old enough to be a grandfather. You know, if one of my kids suddenly decided, one of my older kids decided to have a child.
Yes.
You know, I could be a grandfather within 9 months.
Well, of course you could.
Or a year.
Of course you could.
And then in another 20 years, you could be working with them. And you'd only be sort of 85.
Beggars belief.
Or something like that. How about this one from Roger? Old Porky has single-handedly turned the Beatles into the most hated band in the world. He mentions them and the audience turns off.
No.
Please stop it.
Honestly, I have to say that I was a bit wary of this 50th anniversary because I thought, well, they have been talked about so much over the years. However, you have to understand that they weren't just a pop group. They were a cultural explosion which changed the world.
Well, let's wait until we get the guest on.
Changed the 20th century.
Because otherwise people will get wound up about it.
And changed the colour of the world and the aspirations of everybody in it.
Well, they didn't actually. But anyway, Steve says, I thought Porky would have mentioned Marilyn Monroe's birthday, which was going to be today.
Well,
why have you not mentioned that?
The reason I haven't mentioned Marilyn Monroe's birthday is because I've been watching what I think is a great programme on TV called The Kennedys Post-Chappaquiddick.
Oh, yes.
And it got slated by some TV reviewers as being bland and all. But
you mentioned this the other night.
It's incredibly informative. I mean, it's brilliant, and it shows inside the Hyannis compound, you know, the tensions and the rivalries between family members.
And is it a series, just a one-off?
No, it's a one-off thing that lasted for 2.5 hours. So I'm watching it at half an hour at a time. You see, yeah, but it's
Have they mentioned yet the daughter who was sort of thought to be mentally ill
and had a lobotomy?
And they made sure that she was given a lobotomy because apparently she was, because I remember unearthing this particular story. I found back in the 80s, funny enough, in America. Yeah. I unearthed the author of the book who had revealed it because it was all hush-hush and nobody had found out about it. But it turned out that because she was quite sort of, shall we say, lascivious and she was quite sort of sexual, but with it she also was not, she was thought to be a little bit sort of, mentally defective. Yeah. That they basically put her in a home, locked her up and had her given a lobotomy like in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
That's right, yeah.
To stop her from ever being able to do anything.
No, they haven't gone on to that.
Which was a horrendous
of course it was, but the whole thing was horrendous. I mean, the cover-up at Chappaquiddick was so horrendous. I mean, at one stage, they were all sitting there plotting about, well, why don't we say that Mary Jo Kopechny was driving the car and I wasn't even in it? Right. Or I was thrown out before it went on the bridge or something like that. I mean, it was absolutely disgraceful, Yeah. And the fact that Edward Kennedy's wife was Ethel.
Ethel, yeah.
Yeah, was a complete and arch drunk from the very, very early days of their marriage.
You might have to say there was a reason for that, though, because he was such a philanderer.
That's right, yeah.
Basically, I don't think he was ever faithful to her from minute one.
No, that's right. That's absolutely true. None of the Kennedys were. The Kennedys saw women as chattels.
Well, they regarded it as their right to be as promiscuous as they wanted to be.
Yes, that's right. That's right. They certainly did, yeah. And then also they explore the relationship between Jackie O and Aristotle Onassis, which I don't think, because I've read a book about the Kennedys involved in Onassis and all that, and he's made out to be this utterly smoothie, charming individual who clearly just wanted to marry the most famous woman in the world, but at the same time loved her and cherished her and all that. That's never the way it came over in the books I've read. It was always that she was a possession, and the night they got married, he put her in their mansion on, Greece somewhere, Athens or something like that, and when she said, "Where are you going, Harry?" He said, "I'm going to see my mistress, Maria Callas," and off he went.
Off he went because that was the way it was.
Yeah, exactly.
And Jackie O presumably knew that before she got into the situation she was in.
Yeah, I think she did.
She took her side of the bargain and figured it was still a good deal.
That's right. Yeah.
Here's one from Trevor who says, "Stop saying between you and I, with you and I, etc. It's me, not I, after a preposition. Shocking English grammar from ex-scribes. Well, Trevor, this is a guy who says this every single night. Between you and I is an expression.
Of course it is.
He continues to say that it should be between you and me.
No, it shouldn't be. No.
The problem with people who become very pedantic about the English language is that it's a movable feast.
Of course it is.
And between you and I is perfectly acceptable,
of course it is.
Between you and me. Trevor, I'm sure that you are very, very hard on this and very, very, shall we say, political about the way that English should be spoken.
Yes.
But move on, mate, because it's getting a bit boring.
It is.
Just between you and I.
That's right. Now, you've been talking about the English language there, right?
Yeah.
I've got a fantastic... You know, I love researching the English language.
I know, because you mangle it so much.
Well, I found some more great words which have fallen out of usage, which are wonderful. What do you think the word owl-light means?
Owl-light? No, I wouldn't even hazard a guess at that.
If you think of the 17th century England, there you go.
Is it something to do with pirates?
No, and you say, what time are we going to go feasting tonight then?
I see. Well, so it's like sort of dusk or something like that.
Well, it's twilight. Owl-light is twilight.
Okay.
What do you think a Rory Bumler is?
A Rory Bumler? I don't know.
Well, looking up at the sky in the fields there, and there's a Rory Bumler's tonight.
Right.
And Rory Bumler is a fast-moving storm cloud.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
It's great,
I would never have guessed that. So what's the origin of Rory Bumler then?
Well, I don't know. Well, I mean, they call it the Rory Bumler. It's the fast-moving storm clouds, isn't it?
All right.
Now then, just look at that shive light. Isn't it beautiful?
Shive light.
The shive light.
Well, since all of these things are about looking into the sky, I presume this is also about looking into the sky.
Yeah.
A shive light. Is it daylight or is it sunlight?
Well, no, it's lances of light cast through a woodland canopy.
Oh, right.
So you're walking through a wood, and of course most of it's covered by the greenery and the trees, but the light that comes through is the shive light. I was going to
ask if it was that, you know, sometimes when you see the light shining on the sea through a cloud, and it looks like it's shafts of light.
Yeah.
I was going to suggest
that.
Well,
something like that. Look at it. Smell that petrichor. Oh, isn't that lovely?
Petrichor?
The petrichor.
Is it some kind of flower?
No, it's the smell of dry earth and rock that comes before and during rainfall. Okay. You know when the rain hits the ground and then that wonderful sort of smell comes up?
Yes, I do that.
It's really glashtrock.
Glashtrock?
Glashtrock.
No.
Glashtrock is incessant rain.
Incessant rain.
It's a downpour.
So is this all from one particular dialect of English?
It's 17th century England and we lost all the words.
Uh-huh. Well, maybe we can ask Rebecca about them.
We've lost over 6,000 words.
Well, maybe we can ask Rebecca when she comes on.
Rebecca.
She's our historian.
Oh,
she's coming on to talk about the Battle of Medway.
Of course she is, yeah.
Because this will be her period.
That's right.
She might be able to shed some light on why those words have disappeared.
That's right. Look at that Neptune Zooey.
Neptune Zooey.
That's a sea mist.
Okay.
And then...
Well, I guess that makes sense because of Neptune.
Yeah, that's right. Bit of gludder up there. Fleeting sunshine between showers.
Okay.
And then the smooze. The smooze comes from your part of the world.
Uh-huh.
Sussex dialect for a hole in a hedge left by the repeated passage of a small animal.
Oh, yes. Well, like a ferret.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Or a shrew.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Right, the Landskine. Look at that Landskine.
Landskine.
It's the weave of the horizon lines on a hazy day.
Okay.
And this is a great one here, right? You know, here, I've got to do my Scots accent here, you know. Hey, I'm Stravagan.
Is it not pronounced something without all of those consonants in it?
No, Stravaig, Stravagan.
Yeah,
it means,
but I'm sure I used to go to a bar that was called that in Glasgow.
Well, it could be. It means wandering aimlessly.
And it was pronounced like Straven.
Well, Stravig, it's wandering aimlessly. And then the last one, this comes from East Anglia.
Right.
East Anglia. He's a nerdler.
Nerdler?
A nerdler.
Nerd for short.
Well, yeah, he's a nerdler. Means, you know, aimless, pointless sort of life. You know what I mean?
Pointless, absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. I love these words.
You like that? Well, maybe you should use some of them.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Going back to Donald Trump's tweet, by the way, what I couldn't tell you was that 14 hours ago, after everybody was making fun of the word "ko-fei-fei," he actually tweeted out, "Who could figure out the true meaning of ko-fei-fei?" Question mark. Oh. And then he said, "Enjoy."
Oh, I see. So he's put it now as a puzzle to the world.
Well, he's made out that this is his kind of gift to the world.
I see. You've got to work it out. Yeah.
And actually, he's very much on top of it.
Yeah,
and it was very much him taking the mickey out of everybody else.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
I'm not sure it's true.
Yes, that's absolutely right.
Steve the cabbie says, I'm surprised Porky didn't make comparisons between Kennedy and MG and then say morals of an alley cat.
Well, Morris and Valley Cat went without saying in the Kennedy family. I mean, even Joe Kennedy used to take Hollywood actresses home to Hyannisport, which was the family compound, and just tell his wife to stay in the sort of family quarters while he was romancing, these Hollywood actresses in other parts of the house.
Well, it was a big house.
Well, it was a compound.
Yeah.
I mean, there were all sorts of cottages in the grounds and all that sort of stuff. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, it's a good idea not to open any doors unexpectedly.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, going back to something you said earlier in the week, Dion has picked you up. He says, forever amazed by Porky's recall of Formula One.
Yes.
Shuey spent 2 seasons practicing with Ferrari. Yeah. He won Spanish Grand Prix in his first year.
Yes.
Hashtag El Planco.
Yeah, but he didn't win the title in his first year.
No, but he won quite a few races, though.
Yeah, but he won a few races, but he didn't win the World Formula One title. Of course he won a few races. He was bringing the car back up to speed, and that would occasionally mean winning a Grand Prix. But you haven't taught me anything there, my friend, because I know he won races in his first season with Ferrari, but the point I made was he then honed the car to such perfection, he started winning consecutive world championships.
Okay.
That must be one of the greatest tragedies of all time.
I know.
Sporting tragedies of all time.
I know, incredible, isn't it?
Terrible.
And you could never have predicted that sort of thing happening.
Yeah.
After all the races that he was in, when it was still quite a dangerous sport.
Yes.
Right? Much more dangerous than it is now.
Yeah.
And he survived all of that.
And he was moving at about 10 miles an hour on a pair of skis.
Well, he was going a lot faster than 10 miles an hour.
Well, was he?
Oh, yeah.
I thought he literally had slowed down almost to stopping point when he hit a rock and went over and hit his head.
Well, no, he was wearing a crash helmet, which tells you he was skiing at a very high pace.
Yeah.
Because he was a very good skier. And at that kind of level of intensity, you could be skiing at about 70 miles an hour.
Yep.
Andy says this, the day has finally happened. Porky's morphed into a weathercock.
I can't say anything about that.
Why?
Because it's a family show.
Well, it's nothing to do with a family show.
Yeah, I'm not repeating a word like that.
Well, a weathercock is something that goes on the roof of a building to tell you what the weather's doing.
Well, I reckon it's a weather vane.
Well, it's called a weathercock sometimes.
It's not, it's called a weather vane, and we don't use that sort of language on this show. Right, move on.
If it's a cock, it's definitely a weathercock.
I think not.
You are the vainest man I've ever seen. This is Talk Sport.
A kiss on the hand may be quite continental, but diamonds are a girl's best friend. A kiss may be grand, but it won't pay the rental on your humble flat, or help you at the automat. Men grow cold as girls grow old, and we all lose our charms in the end. But square cut or pear shape, these rocks don't lose their shape. Diamonds are a girl's best friend.
That is, of course, Marilyn Monroe, whose birthday would have been today. 100 years old, I think she would have been, right?
100.
Yeah.
Crikey.
Still another 20 to go under your thing. Coming up later on the hour, Rebecca Rydall's going to join us. It's the raid on the Medway during the Second Anglo-Dutch War in June 1667. Sometimes called the Battle of the Medway, that we're going to talk about. And then we're going to talk about goat yoga coming up as well, which is all going to be very, very amusing indeed. Now, here's one from Jay, who says, with the addition of Bruno Alves, who do the two mites think will rock up at Ibrox next? Lukaku, although they can afford Lukaku. No. I don't think the next time Rangers can summon up 100 million quid,
no,
I don't think they'll be spending it on one player, will they?
No, I don't think so. I do not think so. I think you're absolutely right.
No, exactly.
£100 million, such an extraordinary amount of money, isn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely extraordinary.
Now, here's one from Joe in London, who says, there's a tribute to Mr. Bill Kenwright on Radio 2 at 8 p.m. on Friday.
Really?
The 2nd of June.
Yeah.
Will you be tuned in, Mr. Parry?
Well, I certainly will. I mean, Mr. Kenwright has been a regular contributor hosting shows on Radio 2. So he's a good friend of their station, all that kind of stuff. So that will be fascinating to listen to, indeed.
No, indeed, it certainly will.
Now, what time did you say? 8 p.m. on Friday?
Friday, yes.
Now, let's get our working week sorted. So we're doing daytime show Friday.
You'll be available to listen to a radio show on Friday evening.
Yeah, will I?
If you're entirely compos mentis.
Yeah, compos mentis.
Well, yeah, because we're working 10 till 1 on Friday.
Yes.
So you've spent so much time putting all this together, you've got confused. Friday, we finish at 1 o'clock.
Yes, that's right.
That's
1 p.m.
1 p.m.
Yeah, but then you said I might have things to do.
Well, you'll have things to do, but you don't have to work until Saturday. So you can always make sure that you can either listen to it live or listen to it later.
You know, on your Sky Box,
Yeah.
and you can record like programs, TV programs.
Yes.
Can you record audio programs?
You can as well, but you don't probably need to because you might be able to find it on the radio iPlayer and just play it.
There's a radio iPlayer as well, is there? That's all very interesting. I like that. Now, listen, I want to talk to you about something which, again, I have raised the alarm on over recent years. The price of butter has gone up by 53%.
Has it?
Yes.
I don't even... You know what? I'm one of those politician-type people. If you said to me, how much is butter?
Yes.
I'd probably say, I don't know, about £1.50. I don't really know.
No, it's about £1 for a packet of butter.
I don't buy packets of butter very often. I tend to buy the spreadable stuff.
Yes, that's right. Well, I buy that as well. But I also buy butter because I like butter.
Yeah.
There's nothing more tasty than a French baguette sprawled with butter and then jam on top of that. It is marvellous food.
That is quite good.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan. I'm not so much a fan of bread and butter and jam. I'm a big fan of bread and butter.
Yeah, okay.
I love a bit of bread and butter with some soup or something like that.
Yes, so do I. And also French loaves. You get a beautifully cooked French loaf from somewhere like, where did I get my last one from? The Co-op, I think.
Okay.
And it was absolutely lovely.
I'll tell you what, the bakery down in Battle,
yes,
there's some fantastic bread.
Exactly,
really
and you
tremendous.
put butter on that. Now, just like it's about to be revealed that salt is in fact not harmful to you,
as you said yesterday,
and next week when we're doing daytime shows, we will be having on the show an expert who's written a book on salt, saying that it's a myth for the last 100 years that salt is damaging to the body. In fact, lack of salt is damaging to the body.
Are we going to start eating a load of salt then?
We should eat more salt. We should eat more. Not during the course of the show.
No, but I mean, does it have any kind of property that will make you feel better? Is what I'm saying.
Well, lack of salt does your bones in and all sorts of things, and ages you very much more quickly than if you eat proper portions of salt.
Right.
Now, exactly the same thing has happened with butter over the years, right? Yeah. So this report I've got from my Consumer Affairs Journal earlier today.
Your Consumer Affairs Journal?
Yes.
Oh, lucky that came in today.
Yeah, it says butter prices have soared by 53% due to dairy shortages, but also increased demand from shoppers. Now, because of people like me who've been able to spread the word... Get it? Spread.
I like
spread
it.
butter.
Very good.
The word that butter is not harmful to you necessarily.
Yeah.
And I, of course, am a heart victim. Only 1/3 of my heart works.
Well, you say you are, but you're recovering.
Recovering.
Well,
but I'm a victim of acute heart failure.
Yeah.
You know, which is often a fatal condition.
Well, usually a fatal condition.
Yeah, usually a fatal condition.
Yeah.
But I fought back against it, mind over matter, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm standing up and saying I think butter's okay. Recent studies conclude that butter is not a bad food after all, and as a result of these reports, families have foregone margarine and low-fat alternatives and turned back to butter.
Yeah.
But
I can't stand margarine. I've never been able to.
I
stand
can't
it.
either.
I've never been able to put it on anything.
I can't either.
I've never cooked with it. I've never put it on bread.
I can't. If you know, when you were a kid and sometimes you went to parties where they served the sandwiches and there was margarine instead of butter on them, I hated it. Yeah.
Very low
and in
rent.
fact, you know, Lord Heseltine, who is a Tory grandee,
he is,
and still alive, obviously.
Yeah.
Not involved in this election, of course. He's too old now.
Still, what you might call a senior character, a grandee indeed. He'll be. I'm sure on election night he'll be wheeled out. To give his view.
I'm sure. And still has a shock of hair. Now he is a very wealthy man. I think he founded Haymarket Publishing, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
And got to the first.
I think he sold it now.
I think he sold it now, but I think his children still retain some.
But I always remember because I think I was once interviewed for a job on Campaign magazine. Or something like that.
That's right. Yeah. Owned by Haymarket.
Yeah, which was Haymarket. That was their flagship sort of advertising Bible type.
Yes.
And it was very well put together and very expensively. You know, the paper was very expensive. And
what was this? The magazine?
Campaign magazine.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And it was the sort of the Bible for the advertising
industry. Right. Yeah.
And I think I went to Haymarket Publications for an interview. Right. I was very impressed with their building.
Really?
Didn't get the job, of course.
Well, of course you didn't. The minute you walk in with your greasy hair,
I was very young.
No,
I was very young. I wasn't fat
waddling
at all.
around.
No, I was not waddling. No.
You know, and your belly flopping all over the place.
No, I was in my 20s when I was very slim, actually.
Yeah.
So you got that completely wrong.
No. You looked like that then. I knew you then.
No, you didn't. You did not know me in my early 20s. When you first met me, I was 24.
Anyway,
right? And I was not fat. I did not become fat until I was about 27.
This is a story about Lord Heseltine.
Yeah.
And he's an incredibly wealthy man now. I think his wealth is something like £200 or £300 million.
Something like that.
He's got this huge spread in Northamptonshire where they've developed the garden to the sort of standards of Capability Brown.
Oh, yeah.
And it's now on, the list of, great gardens of England that people go look at and all that. It's on the list of those.
Well, his house.
Oh, it's alongside Hampton Court Gardens and all that kind of stuff, So, anyway, he went to either Cambridge or Oxford. I think it was Cambridge University. And he wrote out on the back of a cigarette packet, my career plan. First class honours degree, research assistant to MP, local MP, government minister, prime minister. He says it'll take me about 20 years.
Yeah. And he got very close.
He got very close indeed. In fact, everybody thought he was going to get it, particularly his wife, Anne, who'd gone into Downing Street to measure up the curtains. Yeah. But anyway, the point of my story is that when he got very close, I read a biography of his life, and he was so clever early on. He started buying cheap property in Shepherd's Bush and renting it out to sort of businessmen, that kind of stuff. Right. And a friend of his went to find him one night, to see what he was doing, and he was preparing the breakfast stuff, for the following morning for the people who were the lodgers in his house. And I remember this, I don't know how I remember, he found him.
What do you have lodgers for?
Well,
he came from money as well, didn't he? I mean, he had money.
No, he didn't really. No.
Did the family not have money?
No, not really. I mean, his family were professionals, but they didn't have, like, estates or land or houses and all that. Well, he was buying cheap property up and he was renting out rooms to other people.
Well, that's why I'm surprised that he was doing it. I didn't think you had to do that.
Yeah, well, the point is, you don't understand that we're the first generation of people who, as young men, went and bought their own flats or their own houses. Before that, like my father, when he was a travelling salesman, lived in digs. He rented a room in a house upstairs and all that kind of stuff. Right. That's the sort of thing they did. But when this colleague of his, who was also a Cambridge graduate, and they were in the property development business together before they went into publishing, he went down to find Michael mixing half a packet of butter with half a packet of margarine to cut cost on the breakfast. Right. Imagine that, Lord Heseltine.
Extraordinary.
Yeah, but I mean, that's how people make money, by being fastidious with their overheads.
Or being a bit tight, as some people might say. Now, I'm not quite sure what this means, but in order to help us translate, or pronounce rather, Andy says this: to pronounce Stravagin, as it's spelt, a porky, to wander aimlessly around, think of the Yiddish oy vey, and that's the correct way. But I'm not quite sure which bit the oy vey refers to.
Neither am I. So what does oy vey mean?
Well, oy vey is just a kind of a Yiddish expression for goodness me.
Oh,
goodness gracious. Oy vey. Yeah. So maybe it means Strøyvegen. Does that mean he pronounces it that way?
Strøyvegen?
Strøyvegen?
Could
maybe.
be.
That could be.
Could be.
Steve the cabbie says, as MG changes sex, the extreme meaning of morals on alley cat, as a promiscuous woman of loose morals who picks men up at bars.
Oh, yeah?
Well, I think it can be used for either.
Yeah, it can.
It
can. I think you're being a bit too specific
and Jack says, only Porky could get the Battle of Medway and the Battle of Midway mixed up.
That's right, yeah, absolutely.
They were 270 years apart in different hemispheres.
Yes, that's quite right, yeah. And slightly different sort of military hardware, which took place in both.
What do you make of this from David? He says, my wife's home today and says that guy, MG, likes the sound of his own voice.
Right, well, I can't disagree with that. I mean, blimey.
Has she gone mad?
If I can get a word in edgeways in these shows
if you can get a word in edgeways.
I'd
love for somebody to actually measure that.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure that it's not a 50-50 split.
Well, I'm sure these things can be done. Now, what I want to talk to you about is, have I finished the butter story yet?
Well, I don't know.
Because,
what was the point of it?
Well, right, now then, you were saying about the price, right? Yeah. The price of Tesco slightly salted 250-gram English butter block has risen 53% to $1.30 in the past year. That comes from The Grocer. That was another magazine that didn't employ you, wasn't it?
That's exactly right, yeah. In fact, I got shortlisted for the editor's job there.
Right.
And then they gave it to somebody else.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they said I wasn't old enough.
You weren't old enough. How old were you?
I was only about 21.
Oh, dear me. Right, a 250-gram block of Asda's Smart Price salted butter, 35% more than a year ago at £1.08.
£1.08, okay.
Yeah, so the butter's going up all over the place. So I got the price right, but so did you, because it is about $1.30 these days.
Yeah, well, I think I tend to buy Kerrygold spreadable butter, which is the Irish one.
I try always to buy English butter, you see. Kerrygold is Irish.
I like the Irish butter better.
Kerrygold, as we're talking about the...
Much thicker.
Yeah, much thicker, I agree. As we're talking about the British lines, right, now, O'Reilly, right?
O'Reilly.
Blimey O'Reilly. Tony O'Reilly.
You mean Tony O'Reilly?
No.
The guy that used to run Heinz.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that who you mean?
Tony O'Reilly. I'm writing that down so I don't forget. Now, Tony O'Reilly.
Not Blimey O'Reilly.
No, not Blimey O'Reilly. That's right. Yeah. Oh, Blimey O'Reilly. No, this is Tony O'Reilly. Now, he was an outstanding rugby player.
He was indeed.
So he goes to University of Dublin, gets a top degree.
Yeah.
And then he starts working in business in this country, but at the same time playing rugby.
Yes.
He was a terrific player for Ireland and the British Lions.
Was he not a Blue as well or something from Oxford?
I think
Rugby Blue, possibly?
I think he could have been. I think you're absolutely right. I think he certainly distinguished himself in playing rugby as a student. I thought he went to Dublin, but he could well have done postgraduate
Well, he could have done both, yeah.
Cambridge,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But anyway, the point of my story is, whilst he was marketing manager for the Irish Food Board...
Oh, right.
Right?
Yeah.
He invented the expression Kerry Gold for their butter.
Did he?
And made it a worldwide product.
Oh, okay.
And it was on the back of that and that success that he went and started working
ended up at Heinz.
in Heinz in America,
Yeah.
where he became, didn't he, not only the CEO, but I think chairman and CEO, wasn't
I think he did. I think he did. I'll tell you another story. I'll tell you another story about him coming up very shortly.
Because he bought the Independent newspaper as well.
He did that as well. I think he owned the Irish Independent first.
He owned the Irish Independent, but he also owned the Great Glass Company as well.
Waterford.
Yeah.
You may well be right.
Yeah.
I've got even more stories about him than that, which I will tell you very shortly because we're out of time. Lots more to come. You can tweet us, of course, at the two Mikes, at Mike Parry, at IROMG. This is TalkSport. Some band called the New Beats, apparently.
What was that?
1964.
What were they called? The New Beats?
The New
That was a
Beats.
great record, that.
You know this one?
Well,
I don't remember it.
I was a very young kid, but that was in the era of things like... do you remember Herman and the Hermits?
Oh, yeah. Herman's Hermits.
Yeah, you know, something is happening to me and it's happening
Used to wear
to
those
you.
ridiculous suits that go all the way up the top.
Yeah. No milk today, my baby's gone away. I told the milkman I've got nothing else to say.
Do you mind if I read you out a couple of tweets here? Here's one from Gray, who says, I had a racing heart, 150 BPM, is that beats per minute,
I don't know.
a few weeks ago. Well, you should know, you're the heart expert.
Well, that's true, yeah.
Ambulance, hospital, electric shock, reset the heart, and apparently it was low sodium.
Yes.
So he's backing up your...
Oh, I see, but he's okay now.
Well, he's alive.
Well, you see, it says
He's
here...
tweeting us.
Look, it says here, a US study published last year found eating butter had no effect on raising heart disease, right? It followed years of warnings from health professionals to stay away from it, but Ali Loughlin, an analyst at Kantar World Panel, you know, a respected authoritative institution on food, told foodnavigator.com, which is one of the world's most respected websites on food, okay?
Yes.
The trend for more natural and less processed products has led many Britons to move away from margarines and other low-fat alternatives and to move back to butter.
Really?
Butter is no longer viewed as wholly bad for you, but rather part of a healthy, balanced diet. Now, I've been trying to tell people this since I was about 16, right? Since I was about 16.
Well, the butter's good for you.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt.
Do you remember when you used to go to eat out in America? I don't know if you ever were a fan of lobster.
No.
But, you remember they would have liquid butter to dip the lobster in?
No.
I would always draw the line at that.
Oh,
because I thought you're literally making me, you know, put something around my heart, which is going to make it collapse and die. You know, when you see people taking the lobster meat out of the pincers and whatever,
Not for me.
You dip it into the melted butter and put it straight in your mouth.
Yes.
I couldn't do that.
Have you noticed, by the way, and you may have noticed this years ago or decades ago, that when you put food in your fridge, you think it is sealed off then from the outside world.
Yeah.
But without a shadow of a doubt, if the temperature is warm and muggy and particularly... what's the other thing? Not heat.
Humid.
Humid.
Yeah.
Is it humid?
It was quite humid today,
It was very humid today. It's very humid.
I went out
and
at one point
what?
and I thought there's about to be a massive thunderstorm.
I did.
And it never came.
I did. It's very humid, and I've noticed that when it's very humid outside of the fridge, the fridge is still cold inside, but it definitely affects the food in the fridge because milk goes off quicker, and stuff becomes, to my mind, inedible.
Well, I'll tell you,
a lot sooner.
Well, I'll tell you about a little
secret. I'm sure there must be some atmospheric connection.
I'll tell you a secret about that because when I used to work in the bakery, we used to have these huge fridges, right? Because we used to have long sort of bakery type trays with cream cakes on them.
Right.
And so you would need to, open and close the fridges. And obviously when it was hot, the owner would always say, don't open the fridges as much.
That's right.
But the fridge motors, which were on the top of the fridge, used to work an awful lot harder in the hot weather than they did in the cold weather.
I'm sure that's
and
right.
It was much, much more difficult to keep the fridges cold.
I'm sure that's right.
No question.
I'm fastidious about not eating food that is in any way sort of deteriorated. Do you know what I mean?
Well, you don't want to eat food that's gone off.
Well, no, it's not just that. It's that, some food, like, for instance, bread.
Yeah.
Now, you don't put bread in a fridge, or at least I don't.
You don't, but although sometimes in the cold weather, depending on what sort of bread it is, if it's like bread inside plastic that you bought sliced, I tend to put that in the fridge.
You do?
But real bread, real sort of bakery bread, I don't.
No, exactly, that's what I mean. Now, the first sign of bread turning for me, bang, it's in the bin.
Right.
And the first sign is the edges starting to harden a little, just a little. I love...
Well, the other big sign is when it starts getting mouldy.
Well, you wouldn't eat to mould on it, would you?
No, but you cut the mould off.
Oh, I can't do that, you see. No, if I see anything resembling mould on a piece of bread, it all goes in the bin because you know then that the rest of the yeast in the bread is about to turn as well.
That's true.
And it could turn the minute you bite it and put it into your mouth and it goes into your stomach.
Yeah.
And eating mould is extremely damaging to your heart.
It's not a very good idea.
So don't do it.
It's not a very good idea.
Yeah.
Now, let me tell you a couple of quick announcements. Rodney sent this in actually a couple of days ago.
Right.
But he said, hey, guys, just wondering if I can get a birthday shout-out on the show. I'm 39. I never miss a podcast.
Right, what's his name?
His name's Rodney.
Rodney, 39 years of age. It's a fine age. It's 3 times 13. And 13 is an unlucky number, but don't let that put you off, OK? You just have a great birthday, pal.
And Robbie says, can I get a double birthday shout, please? First, Jessica, the mother of my children for today, and Isabella, who's 9, and she's my eldest. No, it doesn't say whether her birthday's the same day.
Sorry, what's the mother of the children's name?
Jessica.
Jessica, have a very, very happy birthday. You're clearly a wonderful woman and a fine mother.
Yeah.
And I hope that you share the joy of your birthday with your little girl who's 9, whose name is...
Isabella.
Isabella.
Yeah.
Tomorrow. You'll have a wonderful 48 hours. And I hope it's a classic and memorable family occasion.
Thank you very much indeed. Trevor says Heseltine did come from a very rich family to begin with.
Did he?
And he went to Oxford, not Cambridge, and he is dyslexic.
Oh.
Sadly, also a Euro fanatic.
He is a Euro fanatic.
Well, I wouldn't say he's a Euro fanatic. He's a fan of the European Union.
No, he's a Euro fanatic.
He's not a fanatic.
Him and Ken Clarke were. They stood on a panel alongside Labour politicians and said, let's stay in Europe.
Well, they wanted to stay in Europe, and unfortunately for them, the vote went the other way.
Yes.
Now, talking to Tony O'Reilly, he had a brother,
right?
And he had a brother who ended up working for Heinz as well.
Right.
Who became quite wealthy.
Yes.
And the reason I mention that is because he was the brother, believe it or not, of a friend of ours, a mutual friend of ours, Mr. Dermot Pagavey.
No, brother-in-law.
No, I think he was brother, wasn't he? I think it was his brother. I think it was Dermot's brother who ended up being quite close to Tony O'Reilly.
Oh, I thought you said Tony O'Reilly's brother.
No.
No.
Sorry, I meant to Dermot Pagavey had a brother who worked for Tony O'Reilly.
Right. Would that been in Philadelphia? Because Heinz were based down in they were certainly in Pennsylvania.
I think he was based in Ireland actually.
Oh, based in Ireland. Okay.
And he somehow ended up working for O'Reilly in the Heinz business in America.
Right.
But he worked in Europe, I think, for them.
Yes,
so
I see. I understand.
The boss of Heinz Europe, something like that.
I understand what you mean. But the Heinz HQ in America is in Philly.
Is it? I don't know.
Well, it's certainly in Pennsylvania. What's the other?
Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
No, Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh.
I think it's in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It's not in Philadelphia because that's music, isn't it? All that. It's in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
57 varieties and all that.
That's right. Yeah. And he was a terribly, terribly successful man. And funny enough, you should say that. When I was in Washington, D.C., right, when I was the United States editor of the Daily Express and great friend of Sir Robin Rennick, the ambassador there.
As you've explained on a couple of occasions before, and you might find on the Record podcast in more detail.
You will find it on the Record podcast in more detail. I bumped into this guy. In fact, I don't know why, but I had to contact, Heinz or Tony O'Reilly or something about a story. But it was a positive story because I was always bigging up British companies in America and I regarded Heinz as
that was part of your job as the the spy, asking questions
absolutely.
that weren't going to upset ministers, right?
Absolutely. And until I got
I
got to America anyway, the first time in my early 20s, I thought Heinz was a British company anyway because we eat so much of it over here, don't we? Soup, beans, you name it, ravioli, sour cream,
salad cream,
tomato
ketchup,
ketchup,
the big soup, and all that.
Yeah, tomato ketchup and all that. So I was quite shocked to find it was an American company, and therefore I always held it to my heart as a sort of British company. So I wrote some great story, and it meant contacting Heinz, and then I got a note back from Tony O'Reilly's office, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was to meet one of his people in a great restaurant in Washington, D.C.,
right,
to discuss further projects, i.e. me writing other good things about Heinz, you know what I mean?
This is a disgraceful story.
I know.
That was shocking.
Yeah.
I mean, did you not have any kind of...
scruples?
Not just scruples,
not really.
But did you not have any ethics? About being a journalist. Have you not seen, for example, All the President's Men?
Yes.
You know, where the whole point of being a journalist is to expose wrongdoing.
Oh, I agree.
And to expose the kinds of things that ordinary people in the street don't get to know about.
Yeah, but hang on. It's not wrongdoing to say Heinz baked beans taste nice.
But
that's not wrongdoing.
But that's PR. If you want to be in a PR business, public relations, you go and join a PR company and you get them to pay you. You don't masquerade as a journalist.
Anyway, the point of the story is that I go to this restaurant, meet this chap, you know, who started off...
Was he American?
He was Irish. He was Irish,
right.
and started off as a very, debonair, well-spoken, polite guy. But after about the first 3 bottles of wine, completely changed into like an Irish drunk, and became a much more interesting man, obviously.
Right.
And we then went off to Jamestown. Georgetown, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm getting confused with the TV series.
Yeah, it's easily done.
Yeah, went off to Georgetown.
That was the previous century.
Yeah, that's right. Went up and down the main street in Georgetown, as you know, hit about 6 piano bars, you know what I mean? And then he started sort of chasing women who, I wouldn't say women of ill repute, but women who were sort of part-time waitresses and this kind of stuff, you know what I mean?
Right.
But then it wouldn't go home, so then we got a cab back to he said, let's, go and have a bit of fun somewhere. And I said, what do you want to have fun for? He said, and I told him where I lived, and he said, I know that building.
Yeah.
Seriously, I said, no, you don't. I said, 617, on...
People do, though, Pennsylvania Avenue.
Pennsylvania, yeah, that's right, yeah. And we got there, and he said, I love the view from the roof. Let's take a couple of bottles up on the roof. And he nearly fell off the roof. He was so
how did he know where the roof... I mean, how did he know to get up to the roof?
I've no idea. I don't know whether he'd met somebody... Do you know who lived in the same building as me? Condoleezza Rice.
Oh, right.
So
I don't think he was with her.
Well, he wasn't with her, but I mean, it was quite a well-known building, you know what I mean? And he actually said he'd been to a party reception on the roof of my building.
Yeah.
And I said, you couldn't have done. He said, I have. And do you know what? When we got up there were all the facilities, like,
like a fence and everything.
There was a fence, but there were canvas, roofs that you could prop up and all this kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
Umbrellas and all.
Umbrellas and all that kind of stuff,
bizarre.
which I didn't know about. And as I say, I knew I had to then call, a car and take him down, put him in a car and send him home. But he was a very good company.
Yeah, well, that's more disgraceful tales than
Yes.
Parry's previous life as a proper journalist.
Exactly.
When in fact, he was never a proper journalist.
What?
This is Talk Sport. Coming up next, we're talking about the Battle of Medway.
Yeah.
Not the Battle of Midway.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Yeah. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Say it again, y'all. Look out. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Listen to me.
This is Talk Sport. We are the two mics, and of course, one of the things we do an awful lot of around here is we try to bring you a little bit of sophistication, a little bit of education, a little bit of history sometimes to the show. We talk about a great many things, and we sometimes do quizzes on historical matters.
Yes, we do,
but, I'm delighted to say that we're joined once again by the very famous historian, Ms. Rebecca Rydell, who was on the show just a few months ago talking about the plague. She had a new book out about what it was like during that period of history. We're now going to talk to her about the Battle of Medway.
Yes.
Not the Battle of Midway, which you thought it was earlier on. Yeah. Rebecca, welcome back to the show. Very good morning to you.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Not at all.
Yeah, well, good to hear from you. Thank you.
The Battle of Medway was, around about 350 years ago. You're going to be celebrating the anniversary of it. Tell us why you love it so much.
Well, not celebrating, commemorating, I think.
Yes.
Because it was a really embarrassing naval defeat.
It certainly was.
Yeah, so it happened, as you say, 350 years ago next month. And what it basically involved was the Dutch fleet sailing along the River Medway and attacking the English Royal Navy ships as they were at harbour close to Chatham Dockyard, burning around a dozen of these ships and then towing away the flagship of the Royal Navy at the time that was called the Royal Charles.
Yes, it was. I mean, it was our version of Pearl Harbor, to be honest. We were completely unprepared, and they came in. And, Rebecca, isn't it a case that a lot of the tension that led to this raid had been fuelled literally by the Great Fire of London the year before, when we suspected heavily that Dutch spies had set fire to our capital city?
Yeah, that's right. The English and the Dutch had been at war with one another since early 1665.
That's right.
So there'd been lots of battles that had been taking place, but essentially the English blamed the Dutch for everything at this time. So they blamed the Dutch for the plague arriving in London, but they also initially blamed the Dutch for the Great Fire of London. Just before the Great Fire broke out, there'd been an attack on a Dutch village by an English sea captain called Sir Robert Holmes, and he'd torched a load of houses and burned a load of ships as well. So people thought that the Great Fire of London was a retaliation, Dutch retaliation for that event.
That's right. I mean, what people don't understand is that the Dutch in those days were the equivalent of a superpower, weren't they? Before Spanish became, what they were with the Armada and all that, the Dutch were the most powerful trading nation in the world.
Well, obviously the Spanish Armada was before the 1667.
Yes, obviously. Yeah.
But yeah, they were at their zenith as well at this time. They were at the height of their power, and the English and also many other countries around Europe were quite envious of the amount of power that the Netherlands had,
That's
and
right.
Especially Amsterdam, at how rich of a country they were becoming through trade and things.
That's right.
Well, funnily enough, I was watching Versailles at last weekend, which is currently set in that very same period, isn't it? Because there's all sorts of conversations.
Sexual activity in that, isn't there?
Well, there is in Versailles, but that's because they've sexed it up so that people like me will watch it.
Yeah.
But what I'm
it's a family show, this.
Well, yeah, I know that. But what was interesting to me is that there's a war going on between France and Holland as well.
Yes.
And Louis XIV is trying to do some kind of a deal, with the guys in Holland to underspin, if you like, the people who are really running Holland. So there's all sorts of things going on in this particular year, 1667.
Yeah, and obviously, like the French are they're involved in everything, and they're basically at this time they're at war with England as well, but they're not actually doing that much. They're just sitting back to see how the war progresses, because it works to their benefit to have England and the Dutch at war with one another, because while they're at war, the French can go off and claim lots of trade bases because they're free to do so.
Yes.
The French are very, very involved in everything that's going on. And then later on, 1672, the English are on the French side in a new war against the Dutch again.
That's absolutely right.
And so, why do you keep saying she's absolutely right? She's a historian.
Yes,
of course she's absolutely right.
I know, but I'm.
Well, you don't have to keep telling her that she's right.
I'm just I'm just saying that I'm in accord with everything you're saying.
Well, that's
Rebecca.
very good of you.
Yes. Now, Rebecca, can you tell us what was the long-term consequences of this dreadful defeat for our Navy?
Well, it's a hard one to say. I mean, after the defeat, lots of new ships were commissioned, and they were built in a modern style. Well, a modern style for that time, obviously.
Yeah.
In a modern style, so it gave the Navy extra strength, I suppose, over time. But it also had very deep psychological repercussions, because after the year before the Great Fire had happened, the year before that the Great Plague had been going on, and so for lots of people they thought that it was all part of this three-pronged punishment from God for lots of sins that they'd committed.
That's right.
So there were deep psychological repercussions afterwards.
But in fact, what happened was, as a result of us having to reassess our naval power, we started then to become the predominant navy in the world, the predominant sea power, which led, in fact, to the creation of the East India Company and ultimately Britain's supremacy for 200 years at sea after the Battle of Trafalgar.
Yeah, I suppose that's the long view. That is essentially the case. And obviously, as well, the other factor with that history is that William of Orange, who is in Versailles, the programme, William of Orange came over in 1688.
That's right.
And it in a way, it undermined the Dutch naval supremacy because their stadtholder, which is essentially their prince, was now King of England as well.
King Billy.
So there are a lot of these ships sunk on the bottom of the bed of the River Medway that if people were to go down and try and find, they could find, or have they all kind of disappeared?
They've all disintegrated.
Yeah,
there's
loads
actually.
of ships. There's loads of shipwrecks under the Thames. And also there have been excavations. I think that's the right word when it's underwater, but there's been excavations of a ship called the London, which was blown up at the beginning of the Second Anglo-Dutch War. Right. And the divers have retrieved and found lots of really interesting artefacts like compasses, leather boots, candles even that have remained intact over all these years.
That's right.
There's lots of stuff.
The difficulty is, Rebecca, if you raise any of those ships, I mean, do you...
Be like the Mary Rose.
Well, I was about to say, the enormous effort put into the raise of the Mary Rose, it took about 30 years. It took an immense amount of money, about £10 million, and it takes an immense amount of money to keep what's left of the Mary Rose preserved. It has to be sprayed permanently by salt water from the sea and all this kind of stuff. I mean, you'd have to go through all that process if you brought one of the ships up, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and obviously the London ship in particular, that was blown up in a kind of freak accident. So that is in parts down there as well. So the same thing wouldn't be able, you wouldn't be able to do the same thing with the London wreck. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So what sort of commemorative things are going to be happening around the anniversary as such? It's later on this month, or in June. Well, it is June already, I suppose.
Well, they'll have a load of people running round in historical gear down on the Medway.
Well, how do you know that?
Well, they will, won't they, Rebecca?
Well, I'm asking Rebecca. What are they going to be doing,
Rebecca?
Rebecca?
Well, they are. Yeah, they are. There's lots of things going on. Lots of things going on at Chatham Dockyard.
Yeah,
lots
I knew
of things
that.
going on across the channel as well. In Amsterdam, there's
in old Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But also it's interesting because there were just another like a bit of a tangent. There were lots of English people that because they weren't being paid very well, they were going over to the Dutch fleet. So when the Dutch fleet arrived, there was this man, and his name, he was an Englishman. His name was Robert Holland, and he defected, as you would if you had that name.
Well, how an unusual name,
side.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was so that was the other dimension to it all, that this wasn't just a wholly Dutch fleet. There were English people attacking an English port as well.
Well, I mean, that wasn't uncommon, was it, in naval practices in those centuries, because often the Royal Navy had to be staffed by sailors who came from all sorts of other countries, But
there's no particular Dutch, I wouldn't say. I mean, I spent quite a bit of time in Kent. I've never noticed any particularly Dutch influence, really.
Well, they didn't win. In the end, it was a raid.
I'm not asking you.
No, it was
I'm asking Rebecca.
Oh, OK, Rebecca.
Sorry, Rebecca, is there any Dutch influence in Kent, in the Medway towns?
Dutch influence?
Yeah,
I'm not sure. Well, I mean, I suppose the big influence would be like the Chatham Dockyard, because the reason that came to preeminence in a way in the 17th century anyway, later 17th century, was because of the Dutch wars. So the power of these dockyards is testament to those.
Sure. But what I'm saying is they didn't win the battle and then kind of come and invade Britain, did they? They didn't sort of land on the shores and make everybody speak Dutch.
They waited a couple of decades, didn't they? And then William of Orange came over.
That's right.
But yeah.
King Billy. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Well, Rebecca, that's absolutely fascinating. Thank you very much indeed for outlining all that.
I'm sorry, Rebecca, that he keeps interrupting you and telling you that you're right.
Rebecca, I have huge respect for historians like yourself who bring to life the greatness of our country from 300 years ago, and I just like sharing it with you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah. You haven't got a book coming out about it or anything, have you? Because your plague book was fascinating.
Well, it's the same one, so I'm happy to give that a plug again.
Okay, yeah, do so. Please do.
Yeah. The only one fact I'd say about this, Rebecca, is that you say in part of your analysis here that the Dutch, under the command of Lieutenant Admiral Michel de Ruyter, over several days bombarded and then captured the town of Sheerness. They should have just blown Sheerness to pieces, shouldn't they? And then we wouldn't have had to suffer it these days.
Very harsh.
It's a bit harsh, yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say that, but anyway.
No, you wouldn't say no.
Rebecca, listen, what's the name of your book so that people can go and get hold of it?
It's 1666, Plague, War and Hellfire.
Excellent stuff.
Lovely.
Well, Rebecca, listen, thank you so much for coming on at such an ungodly hour. We'll speak to you again soon.
Yes.
Enjoy the commemoration. Rebecca Rydell there telling us all about what was going on back in 1667.
That's right.
Here's one from, where are we?
Yeah.
G. Shaw, Gaza. It's very nice of Rebecca to come on the show to speak with the history expert, Porky. You plank.
Yeah, well, I agree with everything she said. I'm a well-known sort of,
Well, Kevin said, can you not
authority.
Shut Porky up? I could agree with everything she said and sound smart.
Yeah, no, I'm a well-known authority on English history. I think everybody would agree with that. By the way, have you ever been to Sheerness?
I don't think so.
Oh, don't bother.
I've been to some of the Medway towns.
Oh, I've been to Sheerness.
Have you?
What happened was, it was the steel strike. It was the steel strike.
Tell me about it in a minute.
Yeah, okay.
Tell me about it. Hold on to that thought.
Yeah.
We'll talk about your visit to Sheerness. Not the one that's being commemorated because it's 350 years since the Battle of Medway.
Yeah.
This is not Medway. This is Talk Sport.
Very superstitious, writings on the wall. Very superstitious.
This is Talk Sport. We are the two mics. Coming up a little bit later on, we're going to be talking, of course, about yoga.
Yes.
Perhaps you won't be such an expert on that because you might not be interrupting the guests quite so much.
Yes.
How about this from Trevor on the subject of Heseltine? Heseltine went to the very posh, expensive boarding school Shrewsbury.
Yeah, Shrewsbury.
Before Oxford. His dad owned many factories in South Wales.
Oh, did
so
he?
he did come from a bit of a wealthy
Okay,
background.
yeah. No,
and I think his dad sort of bankrolled the whole purchasing of the Haymarket
property
business
and all that kind of stuff, yeah.
My Day says, I'm not sure if it's MIDE, he says, please shout out for me completing my master's programme for 2 years while listening to you both. Love your show and listen every day.
Well done.
That's very nice
Excellent
of you.
indeed, yeah.
And Cole says, margarine doesn't go mouldy, flies won't even land on it. Horrible stuff, only one step away from being plastic.
What goes mouldy?
No, he says margarine doesn't go mouldy.
Oh, margarine, I see, yeah.
Flies won't even land on it.
Oh, golly,
He says it's really horrible. And Dave says, Heinz is based in Pittsburgh, you're quite right.
Pittsburgh.
The NFL team, the Steelers, play in Heinz Field.
That's right, yeah,
in
they do,
Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Excellent, yeah.
Is that's right your favourite word of the night?
What's that?
That's right. You've now said that's right about 100 times in the last 5 minutes.
Well, I like sort of making sure that I'm according with the proper delivery of information.
I see.
Okay. Now, Sheerness, right?
Yeah.
So when I was new Suprema of the Birmingham Evening Mail in London,
yes.
the London editor, I used to sort of get out on all the big stories. And the steel strike was pretty brutal in this country. It was in the late 70s, late 70s.
Well, everything was on strike then, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Everything was on strike, yeah. And so...
was there a steelworks down there?
Yeah, huge
What was the name of that one? Because I remember Ravenscraig in Scotland.
No, it was called the Sheerness Steelworks.
Okay.
So I was in Sheerness.
No, most of them weren't actually named after the place they were in.
What, Port Talbot Steelworks?
Ravenscraig, yeah.
Yeah, Port Talbot was in Port Talbot.
Port Talbot was in Port Talbot.
Ravenscraig was in Ravenscraig, wasn't it?
Well, no, I think Ravenscraig was just the name of the steelworks.
No, I think it was the name of the district in which it was located.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just don't remember one in Sheerness, that's all.
Yeah, well, it was, yeah. So I get up at about 3:30 in the morning, to get out there because I'm working on an evening paper, so I want to be filing by about 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
And it's quite a long old drive out to Sheerness from London. Yeah,
a couple of hours.
Couple of hours probably, yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
So I get there and there's this terrible war taking place, because that was the first time I was aware of the flying pickets from the miners' union.
Yeah.
And Arthur Scargill had brought them all down from Yorkshire and Nottingham Fields and all that. And I mean, there were armies of them. And there were armies of policemen there as well. This was a huge battle of, how democracy works and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And it was horrendous. But the point is that, when all the smoke cleared at the end of the day and you're able to go off and, find somewhere to have a drink or something like that, Sheerness was a dreadful place.
Was it?
Now, I'm told it, will have received a bit of investment money since those days, but if somebody said to me, look, we divvy up where people live in this country, and unfortunately we've rolled the dice for you and you're living in Sheerness, I would emigrate.
Would you?
You'd have to.
Well, you might not be able to, though.
Well, you might not be able to.
People that live there might not want to live there.
Well, that's right, yeah.
I mean, I'm just looking at a story here that says the Sheerness steel plant is to reopen after 4 years. This was written in October of last year.
Right.
And it says that restarting of production of bar and rod products should happen by 2017.
Right.
But what it does mention as well is the Isle of Sheppey. Which
Isle of Sheppey, that's right.
And I've found myself on the Isle of Sheppey before.
Oh, what were you doing there?
I think I got lost and ended up on the Isle of Sheppey.
Where were you trying to get to?
I can't remember, but I was somewhere in Kent.
What were you doing out there in
Kent?
I
was in Kent, because my sister used to have a place in Sandwich, right? Because that was where she
got
married.
Right, yeah. That was on the coast, though. That's not difficult to find.
Well, so's the Isle of Sheppey, isn't it? the Isle of Sheppey's on the coast.
Yeah, it is, yes.
And I think I was en route somehow either down towards Sandwich or back up from Sandwich. Yeah. And there was something somewhere in between I had to go and find.
Right.
And I found myself driving around the Isle of Sheppey, which I found to be a terribly bleak place.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree.
Because I kind of had this idea that it might be quite nice because it was an island.
Yeah.
But it was awful.
Awful, yeah.
It was very, very strange.
Oh, well, some of these islands are dreadful. You know, like the Isle of Dogs used to be dreadful.
Well, yeah,
used
but
to be
that's
horrendous.
It's now sort of Canary
That's
Wharf.
now regenerated, yeah.
You ever been to the Black Isle, which is off the coast of Inverness?
No.
You go,
why would I go there? Why would I have ever gone to the Black Isle?
Well, because Inverness is quite an interesting place.
Go to the Black Isle for a few
Well, do you know what
bevies.
was really weird? I did a little tour of the Highlands.
Yeah.
And, stayed in Inverness one night. And was looking to go towards, over by sort of Loch Ness that way. But so went and thought we'll have a look at the Black Isle.
Yes.
You go over this little bridge, very close to where the football ground is. You know, the Super Cali and all that. Went over into the Black Isle, didn't see anyone. It was like a bit like the Wicker Man. We drove around the whole island, right? And bizarrely, on the north side of the island, you look across to where the water is, the loch. And there's a big sort of oil derrick in the middle of the sea. Yeah. And there's 2 or 3 of them. So that completely blights the landscape.
Right, yeah.
Because all you're seeing is like these oil rigs, which are right off the coast.
Are these decommissioned oil rigs?
No, they're bringing oil in.
I see.
Right? And the Black Isle, and I didn't see any children at all.
Right.
And didn't see any marks or where any children would go. No children's playgrounds.
The child snatcher had been in operation.
It was really weird. Yeah. And drove all the way around it and didn't see one person the whole time in about a 45-minute drive.
You know, there's a sort of a magic about the thought of living on your own island. You know what I mean? Living on an island.
Island in the stream.
Island in the stream and all that kind of stuff.
Well, if it was in a sort of Caribbean setting,
yeah,
maybe.
That's right, yeah. But even that's weird, because I've been to loads of islands, and they've all got their very distinctive culture. So the Isle of Man is a very distinctive culture.
Yeah. I've never been there.
Because the Manx people have been born and brought up there.
Yeah.
It's a distinct culture.
And the cats don't have tails, do they?
The Manx cats don't have tails, no, but it is a very distinct culture.
Yeah.
And you're aware of the fact you're not actually on mainland Britain. And if you go to the Isle of Wight, you get exactly the same feeling. It's a very distinct culture, you know?
It is. The Isle of Wight is quite pretty, but kind of a land lost in time, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it is a bit. I mean, they don't help themselves by when you get off the ferry, the mode of transport then from the ferry terminal to like civilization, you know, the edge of town and you know where the bars are and all that, is a 1950s style London tube train.
Yeah,
which is
that's right. I've been on it.
Yeah, exactly. So have I. Yeah, and all that kind of stuff. Now, I've also been to islands in places like the Seychelles. We found one bloke from Yorkshire who lived on his own island there. He bought his own island. You know. He's kind of a local celebrity. Yeah. But even that was incredibly weird. You said, it's a paradise island. It is a paradise island.
You'd go mad, wouldn't you?
Well, there's one man living on it. And you know, he did these things like he said, tell you, lad, you know, I was brought up in
Yorkshire.
Yeah, I was brought up in Batley. He says, and the view from my bedroom window in Batley were nothing but smoky chimneys. Have a look at my view now. Yeah. And he throws open the shutters on his the bedroom window. Yeah. There's no glass in it. They don't need glass because, you know, they just had shutters.
Well, possibly so until the next tornado comes.
Well, no, they just didn't need it, you know. Yeah. And fair enough, there's a spectacular view of, you know, palm trees and other islands and all that. I said, but the problem is, you know, Greg, or whatever his name was, you know. Yeah. I said, that is your only view. What do you mean by that, lad? What do you mean? I said, well, you can't go for a walk, can you, on the fields of Yorkshire? You can't, you know, go and...
No, it's not going to look any different.
You can't go to Headingley and watch the cricket, you know. You can't sort of, you know, go and have a nice pint of Yorkshire beer and all that kind of stuff. You can't go to Whitby, can you, and watch the fishing boats bobbing up and down. That's right, or fish and chips and all that. Yeah, who needs that, lad, when I've got all this? So, but you haven't got all this. It's Nothingsville. And I fell out with him, you know, and said he was a jerk.
So he threw you off his island?
He did.
I'm surprised.
Yeah. And what was weirder... What
are you doing there, anyway?
Well,
he invited you on his island.
Well, I was in the Seychelles and we were on the main island, which is like, is it Marne or something? The
I don't know, I've never
something
been
like that. And we'd been to Bird Island, where there's like 1 billion sooty terns, know, which is quite interesting. Really.
Well, that'd be quite a good view, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and then there's this guy on his island. But the one thing on the island which is really weird was, you know, he takes I'll take you a tour of Ireland. You know, well, it only takes 20 minutes to walk around his island, but right in the middle of it, there's a grave.
Right.
And a church.
Okay.
He's built a little church.
So he built the church?
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's nice. And who's in the grave?
His father.
Oh, right. Well, what's wrong with that?
Well, it's weird because his dad was from Yorkshire.
And had his dad lived there, or did he bring him over to inter him?
No, he brought him there to live there for the last 12 years of his life.
Oh, that's nice.
So he and his dad lived together on the island, and his dad died. So
did he have a wife, this guy?
Well, clearly not. Or if he did, I didn't see her grave or anything like that. So he maybe left in Yorkshire.
He killed her.
Well, no.
I thought he might have had a female companion.
No. Maybe he left her back in Yorkshire or something.
Oh, okay.
So it's old man there. What a boy he was.
Maybe he had killed her. It was his dad in there at all.
But yeah, he said, old man, down fishing on the beach when he was 85, catching fish for dinner and all that, yeah.
Here's one from, where are we? About Ravenscraig. Tam, I'm indebted to him. He says, Ravenscraig is in Motherwell. So
yes.
Thank you. So it's not in Ravenscraig at all.
But
Ravenscraig was the name of the steel plant.
But it is a suburb of Motherwell.
Well, no, it's in Motherwell.
Yes,
Ravenscraig is in Motherwell.
That's what I mean, yeah.
It's not a place, it's a steel plant in Motherwell.
Yeah, but it's like Everton is in Liverpool,
Well, but Everton's a part of Liverpool, isn't it?
Yes, that's right, yeah. And Ravenscraig is a part of Motherwell.
The name of the plant was Ravenscraig.
What colour do Motherwell play in?
They play in orange, don't they?
Orange and red stripes.
Yeah, orange and a red stripe. Funnily enough, talking of orange, Jason says in Gravesend there's a pub called the Prince of Orange.
Oh, is there? Oh,
I mean, there's pubs all over the country called the King of Orange.
Yeah, that's right. King Billy.
King William IV in Hampstead, a very famous pub.
Is it?
For all sorts of reasons, which I won't go into.
Excellent.
And I've got one from Ian here who's listening live on the Shinkansen, which is the bullet train, I think. He's the next stop Osaka.
Wow, brilliant.
He's in Japan.
Oh, I like that.
Isn't that good?
Looks great.
We may have to go there and check it out.
Yes, indeed, yeah.
Because it beats the Eurostar, that's for sure.
Yes.
This is Talk Sport, though. Coming up in the next hour, we're going to be talking about goat yoga. We've already got quite a few tweets on that as well. This is Talk Sport.
Let your booty do that yoga.
Party at the beach down in Copacabana, sipping killer fish. Got my black yoga pants on. Me and Brittany, we've been down in Atlanta, sweating in the club. Call me Dirty Diana, flexing like a yogi.
This is Talk Sport. We are the two mics. Got a bit of information for you from Matt. He says the SS Richard Montgomery was a ship sunk near the coast of Sheerness during World War II.
Oh, I see.
Is
this the one that's loaded full of explosives?
It must be, yeah.
And I think a bit of it still sticks out of the water in the Thames estuary.
Yeah.
And nobody knows what to do with it. And they fear that one of these days it will just erupt.
Yes.
And the explosion would be equivalent to sort of, the bomb dropped on Nagasaki and all that kind of stuff.
Well, so you don't want to be anywhere near the Medway then when that happens, do you?
No, exactly.
Now, I've got a question for you. We're going to be talking about goat yoga in a little while.
We will, yeah.
However, did you see any of the political machinations last night? We are now just over a week away.
No, I didn't know.
Well, in fact, a week today, right now, the polls will be about to open.
That's right.
For the general election.
Yeah.
And there was another one of these debates last night on TV. This time it was on the BBC.
Yes.
And it was with representatives from all the parties, including this time the Conservatives, right?
Yeah.
But Theresa May decided not to go,
Yeah.
and Amber Rudd did it.
Yeah.
And I actually think she did rather well. People
Okay.
say that not only did she do well because of the way that she dealt with a lot of the questions and the answers, but that she looked quite sort of ministerial and also looked quite sort of prime ministerial, some might say.
Yeah, there's some allegations that the audience was loaded and...
there are allegations that the audience was very left-wing. But that's, been going around on Twitter kind of pretty much ever since.
Yeah, sure.
Pretty much ever since. I mean, the UKIP candidate, in fact, Paul Nuttall, said that he was very pleased to have been giving or being able to host a debate in front of that organisation, which is the left-wing section of the Labour Party.
Right.
I mean the BBC audience.
Yeah,
so there were a lot of people that were critical of that.
Yeah.
But I thought Amber Rudd, whose dad apparently died just a couple of days ago.
That's right, 2 days ago.
Did a terribly good job, actually batting away all the various questions that came her way.
Okay.
A lot of people thought that Jeremy Corbyn did all right until he got to the point where he was asked about the Manchester bomber, that he seemed to kind of slightly lose the plot.
Yeah.
The UKIP guy, I don't know why they bother with him, to be honest, Paul Nuttall, because, I mean, he's such a strange character.
Yeah, he's weird.
And he's come out with some very odd things in the past. And he said, for example, I've never flip-flopped or anything in my life, to which I thought of asking him about some of the things that he said in the past, which he's had to, completely, utterly reverse.
The status of certain sections of society and all that kind of stuff.
And also things that he said about the Holocaust, things that he said about Hillsborough.
Yes.
Unbelievable stuff. Angus Robertson was there from the SNP. He's generally thought to have done okay. But again, I mean, he was giving Jeremy Corbyn a hard time for not doing things not being a good enough opposition to the Tories. But, of course, Corbyn then said to him, well, hang on, you guys are in power in Scotland. Why are you not actually doing some of the things that you're advocating that we should do in England in Scotland? Because you're in charge.
That's right, yeah.
And then the Greens lady was very good as well, because at one point they were all asked about leadership.
Sure.
And she said, well, the first sign of leadership is to show up.
Yeah.
Which is obviously a bit of a slap at Theresa May.
Yes, exactly.
So she did all right. So, I mean, it was the first one I've really watched all the way through. And I found it quite interesting. But like a lot of people, I think, in this particular election, you still don't really know what any of them stand for.
No, you don't.
The Greens and the Labour Party and the Lib Dems are saying, well, if you let Theresa May get in, you're giving her a blank cheque to do all sorts of things she hasn't told you about.
Yeah.
Similarly with the Labour Party, if they get in, and all the polls are still saying it's a lot closer than we think.
Yeah, that's right.
They will be doing things that you don't know they're going to do.
People are saying Labour would let unions run riot and all this kind of stuff. So there's all that kind of stuff. One policy which I hope that both sides or all sides might want to address is the situation involving student debt, because apparently it's up to 30 billion quid now.
30 billion,
and I don't think it'll ever be repaid.
A lot of it won't be.
To my mind, and I think Mr. Corbyn has hinted somewhere that. Well, when we get him, we'll just write it off.
There'll be some kind of amnesty.
Yeah, some sort of amnesty or something like that. Because I have to say that I don't think it's a very good system for anybody to start their work in life with a debt of up to sort of £25,000 or £30,000, which they've then got to pay off. It's
not a great idea. However, a lot of the reasons that they're in debt are because they didn't actually do the right things while they were in full-time education.
I totally
For
agree.
example, working. I mean, I went to university, but I worked.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying.
People will say that, well, it was easier when you were doing it because there were grants and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But, if you don't work, then you're going to run up some debt.
I totally agree. I mean, the point is, to administer a £30 billion debt is massively expensive anyway. First of all, you've got to service the debt, but then you've got to employ like hundreds of people to chase all these students up and say, where's the money?
Yes.
So it's become a massive new department of government and completely unnecessary.
Along with the ridiculous pensions regulator, who I got a nice letter from yesterday, by the way, which said, basically confirming everything that we've already done.
Yes.
But it was 2 pages, printed on both sides, sent to me at a cost of whatever it was.
That's right.
Produced presumably by about 5 people.
Yes.
And it's nonsense.
Yeah, of course it's nonsense. Of course it's nonsense. So this is a new student. So what I'm saying is, the reason this has got to this level is because successive governments have decided that a very good way to try and pull the wool over people's eyes and keep the unemployment queues down is just keep building loads of universities and send the kids to university instead, so they don't look like they're on the dole.
Isn't the fact now that there is less sort of, hope that you can go and get a degree and then get a good job, causing people to send their kids to university less? Isn't that happening? Isn't that diminishing?
People are starting to realise. But I tell you what's happening, right? So all of a sudden, Bournemouth Technical College, which it was when my sister first moved there, 25 years ago, then became Bournemouth Polytechnic. Then became Bournemouth University. And now, I mean, the campus has just spread like wildfire, it's like a disease. But the biggest issue in all this is student accommodation.
Yeah.
There is a massive racket, and I say racket in small R-A-C-K-E-T, going on, where building companies are getting contracts for billions of pounds to build new student accommodation blocks.
Right.
You go to any town, and I've been recently to, when I followed Everton around, Southampton, Bournemouth, places like Reading. They've got universities now with massive modern student blocks of great standard quality accommodation.
And is it the university's paying the building companies then?
Well, no. What's happening? Yes, they are, in a way. All the money's coming from the Department of Education. But the problem is it's all based on this ridiculous, PFI, private finance initiative. So what happens
is... You think they'd have learned better?
Well, I mean, this is going to saddle us with debt for years and years and years as universities expand. And
also the ludicrous thing that they did when they went to these universities and said, well, you can charge up to $9,000 a year.
That's right.
But of course they all went, right, it's $9,000.
Exactly.
They didn't go, it's $5,000.
No, exactly.
It's $9,000.
Exactly. So what you've got is, you've got all these brand new universities, all these brand new accommodations, so they think, well, we better fill them with students, right? Well, when you fill them with students, the students have to apply for student loans. They take the student loan, but then 1/3 of students in this country are overseas. So they just go back and don't even pay them. And students in this country just keep saying,
Surely we're not loaning money to overseas students.
We are.
Are you sure?
I'm absolutely certain. I'm absolutely certain.
I didn't think that was possible.
No, I'm absolutely certain.
Well, that sounds even more. Well, they should put a stop to that.
Within the system, The university, it might not be a direct loan from the government, it could be a loan from the university, but they've got to fill these student halls for the students. They've got to get them in some way.
Certainly there's a college in Hastings, which is not what you would call anything other than a sort of, pumped up sort of... further education college,
sure.
really.
Teachers
but do you know who are the biggest, by far, customers of the place?
Yeah.
Kids from the Middle East.
Well,
because kids from the Middle East have got the money to be sent to come there.
That's right.
And I think they pay something approaching £30,000 a year each.
It's like a private university, isn't it?
Well, but it's not very good, though.
No, I know it's not.
And the only reason that there was a problem was because there was, I think it was a couple of years ago, there was a young kid unfortunately stabbed to death. By some local yobbos, and it turned out he was the son of quite a wealthy businessman in somewhere like Qatar.
Yeah, sure.
But it was only then that everyone realised that all the students that go to this place are from either Qatar or the UAE, and then suddenly there was a panic because they thought if kids are getting killed, they're not going to send their sons and daughters.
That's
there.
right.
Shocking.
It is shocking. Do you remember when we did a show at the Guildhall in Portsmouth?
Yes.
Now, a few weeks earlier, if you remember, I went up there and did a bit of canvassing, with the tickets and that kind of stuff. I was amazed, not shocked, because, perfectly decent, hard-working people, but amazed to see how many young Chinese students were there.
Right.
I mean, hundreds.
Yeah.
You'd go into some bars there, and it was like going into sort of Beijing. Really.
Well, they're drinking. I thought there was a great drinking culture in China.
There's a lot of Chinese-themed restaurant bars. You know what I mean? That they were, eating the noodles and all that kind of stuff. You know.
Right.
But in Chester, my hometown. I mean, when I grew up there was famously a teachers' training college.
Yeah.
And that's all it was.
Right.
These kids who couldn't quite get to university but wanted to, some sort of profession.
Better themselves.
Yeah, so they left school with like 1 A-level or something like that. They go to teachers' training for 3 years, I think it is, and then they come out and then they start teaching like junior school children geography or something like that.
Right.
Now, that teachers' training college was in one hall, you could call it, just on the edge of the city of Chester. Crikey, last time I went back, it's now the University of Chester. So it's gone through Teachers Training College, Technical College, Polytechnic, and now University.
Well, they've worked out, of course, in the same way, having looked abroad in America, they've worked out that education is a pretty good business.
Oh, very good business.
And you can get very rich running a place of education. And I think that's why they're trying to turn some schools into academies.
That's right.
Because they're hoping that they'll go the same way.
That's
but
right.
it won't, of course. I mean, but it's a terrible situation.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll talk some more about that.
Indeed.
Because, of course, the election, as we said, is only a week away. We'll be here all night on the day of the 8th, because we'll be bringing you all the results as they come in.
It'll be a hard day's night.
It will be a hard day's night and a hard night's day, whichever way you want to say it. I've got a bit more news for you as well on some interesting local stories.
Oh, lovely!
Some interesting local stories, and I've been getting hassled by some phone scammers as well.
Oh, really?
I'm going to tell you about.
Oh, dear.
This is Talk Sport, which is a sort of an Indian guru type name, which might be associated with yoga.
Baba.
Yeah.
Baran.
Yeah, that wasn't associated with the mystical Indian side of barbarness.
Yeah. Now, listen, I want to tell you something, actually.
Well, I'm going to tell you about my fake scam callers.
Please do.
Just yesterday, as I was getting on the tube around about 10 to 3 in the afternoon, my phone went. And it was an 0141 number.
What time is this?
About 10 to 3.
Today?
Yesterday.
Okay. Oh, yesterday.
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 Do keep up.
Yes.
And it was an 0141 number.
Yes.
I thought Glasgow might be somebody I know.
Yeah.
Could be, people trying to get hold of me for some reason or other. But this voice came on, and I said, a voice came on and asked for somebody that was a different name.
Right.
And a woman's voice. And I said, no, I'm terribly sorry, you must have the wrong number. Oh, right, sorry. No worries, she said, and put the phone down. Now, today, around about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the same number rings, but I didn't actually recognise it. I wasn't really paying attention. But it was another 0141 number, so I answered it.
Yeah.
And this time it was another voice, a male voice, Scottish, asking for, saying they were from Scottish Power, and started this long, sort of complicated explanation of how, I understand you spoke with one of my colleagues yesterday, and we're just ringing to follow up on that phone call about your possibility of switching power companies. And I said, well, actually, I didn't have a conversation with somebody that rang yesterday. Somebody that rang me yesterday asked for somebody who wasn't at this number.
And said they got the wrong number.
And they said they had the wrong number. So I don't understand why you're ringing me back. And he said, well, I'm from Scottish Power. And I said, oh, are you? I said, I haven't asked you to ring me. I said, why are you ringing me?
Yeah.
And he said, well, I understand that you might want to switch your power company. And I said, no, I've never asked anybody if I can switch a power company. And he said, well, maybe have you won a competition recently? And I said, no, I haven't won a competition recently. It's absolutely rubbish. I said, please remove my name and number from whatever database that you've got there, or else I'll be forced to inform Ofcom that you're doing. Anyway, so I put the phone down, and I put the number into Google, and you can do that, if you've got one of these nuisance phone calls.
Yeah.
And it comes up as a nuisance phone call.
Right.
And I don't know what these people are up to.
Right.
But what I thought I would do is put the number out there.
Yes.
So that if anybody gets a phone call from these
Ignore
people,
it.
they could do the same thing.
Exactly.
And it's 0141
Yeah.
380 0238.
Right.
And it looks like an ordinary
And
sort
have you
of Glasgow
tweeted that
number.
out for people?
I haven't, no,
I think
but I
you
can
should.
do.
I think you should.
Because, you know what these people are like. They're probably
yeah.
sitting there at a banker phone. It may be Scottish Power, I don't know.
Yeah.
Right?
But what's the number again? 0141
Yeah, 380 0238.
380
0238.
0238. Watch that number, please. Yeah, okay. Yeah,
Right. So, a lot of people have been on the internet saying that they've had this people ringing them from this number.
Yes.
And it's some kind of a scam. And
Well,
they don't know what it is.
I told you, didn't I? And I dealt with it very effectively. About a couple of weeks ago,
Yeah.
I got a call saying, hello, Mr. Parry. Is that Mr. Parry? Yeah, it says, yeah. It's about your insurance claim.
Oh, yeah.
I said, what insurance claim? Yeah, about the accident with your car. I haven't had an accident with my car.
Yeah.
Oh, well, we had a report that and then I said, no, you've got your wrong number, mate, or wrong person.
But they had your name, though, right?
Yeah, I had my name. Yes,
Yeah.
and I have not had an accident in my car, right? I'm not making... Well, do you want to make a claim anyway, they said. I said, make a claim anyway. What are you talking about,
Right.
And apparently it is a scam.
Yeah.
If you say, well, what do you mean? And then they say, well, you can make a claim,
Yeah.
So what are you on about? And apparently the bogus claims go in, costing the insurance companies tens of millions of pounds a year. And do you know what? The insurance companies, if they're a reasonable claim of about 185 quid, they don't even contest it.
Well, this is it. I was
It's
gonna
too
say,
expensive to contest.
If it sort of oversteps, I suppose,
Yeah.
what would be your deductible, right?
Yes.
And they say they have to pay out an amount of money.
Yeah.
They don't bother contesting every single claim.
That's right. And the other great
That's
scam,
ridiculous.
the other great scams going on at the moment are, and this is this disgrace to our country, British people going to holiday resorts in Spain and claiming things like food poisoning, slipping on wet tiles.
Well, we saw that story a while ago, didn't we?
Yeah.
That there's in Spain now, there's loads of people that go and claim that
That's
they've
right.
had upset stomachs
That's right.
and all sorts of
That's
things.
right, and it's still going on, and it's an outrage. Now, talking about travelling abroad,
Yeah,
right?
go on.
I thought you should know about this. Now, young Pippa, and I know that you're very concerned that her life, turns out to be as magical as we all
Pippa
thought
Middleton.
it would be. Pippa Middleton.
Well, I was the one that alerted you to how big this whole wedding thing was going to be.
Yeah, well, I think I worked that out for myself.
Are you sure?
But anyway, she's off now on the honeymoon, and she's down in Sydney.
Right.
Now, you won't believe it, but I think she's got the same room in Sydney that I had.
No.
Yeah, and it's costing 11 grand a night.
Really? But you
Yeah.
didn't pay for it, though, did you?
I didn't pay for it, no.
Was this in the Ritz-Carlton?
No, it was in the Hyatt on the Rocks.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
Now, the reason it is
The
such
Ritz-Carlton was the one where what's-his-face was found, wasn't it?
Yeah,
The guy from In Excess.
that was in the bay next door. That wasn't in the bay I was in, Sydney Harbour Bay. But anyway, what I'm saying is that they're in this room, which costs 11 grand a night, and it's the hotel's Sydney Suite, which offers panoramic views of Sydney's iconic Opera House.
Right.
It has a private outdoor terrace, a spa, bath, sauna and steam room.
Very nice.
Now, that sounds very much like the room I stayed in.
Really? You had a steam room in the room?
Well, no, I didn't, but I mean, that must be an update, you see what I mean? But I
right.
mean, the point is, it had a huge balcony, there was facility on the balcony,
Right.
it overlooked the Sydney Opera House, it's right on top of the hotel, and this is what they've got. They've moved on to Sydney, where they're understood to be staying at an exclusive hotel where the top suite costs up to £11,000 a night.
Blimey.
Their trip down under has seen them scale the Sydney Harbour Bridge and dine on raw kangaroo. They are staying in
Raw
the
kangaroo?
Yeah, raw kangaroo. Yeah.
Blimey, don't fancy
they are
that.
staying in the penthouse at the 5-star Park Hyatt Hotel. Well, that is the Hyatt on the Rocks that I'm talking about, you know.
Okay.
And
Well, it's probably the same hotel. I doubt it's the same room, though. They'll have the honeymoon suite, won't they?
well, but they gave me the best room.
Well, maybe they just told you they gave you the best room.
Well, it looked like the best room to me. Their room comes with a 24-hour butler.
Yeah.
Mine didn't.
No, so
But,
it's not the same room,
Not in those days. Well, it is, because in those days, I had a room where I had my own collection of DVDs to put in my own DVD player.
Yeah.
I had my own collection of videos, as
Yeah.
it was in those days, to put in my
So
television.
you were probably on, like, concierge floor or something like that.
Well, it was a suite. I mean, there was more than one room
Yeah.
and a bedroom, and,
Okay.
and you pressed a button next to your bed,
Yeah.
and the curtains just went
Right.
opened like that, and the Sydney Opera House was right in front
Very
of your
nice.
face. I mean, it's brilliant. Yes.
It's a shame in those days you didn't have a phone to take a load of pictures. 'cause
It was, I suppose.
You basically wouldn't
well,
take
no,
that many
no.
pictures.
I took pictures with those little throwaway cameras, and
Did
I've
you?
got thousands of pictures at home. I travelled. In fact, I've got many less pictures now than I had then. I don't take pictures on my phone.
Yeah, but except
because,
it's a lot more difficult to look at them, isn't it? Unless you put them in an album.
yeah, I suppose so. Well, you're going back years now, and
Yeah.
I don't look at many of my pictures anyway. So I've given up taking pictures of things, really.
Have you?
As my friend once said, my camera is in my head.
Yeah.
But I do think you should take pictures of places you go.
Take pictures of places you've
No,
been.
I agree.
Exactly.
I agree.
Yeah. And I mean, I know that her husband, James Matthews, is quite a wealthy guy.
Yes.
But 11 grand a night.
Yeah, I know.
If they're staying there for sort of, I don't know how long they're staying there
Well,
for.
probably 3 or 4 nights. They're on a tour around the sort of, the
I mean, has he got that kind of money? I mean, I suppose his parents are pretty
apparently
rich.
he has. Apparently he has, yeah.
Bizarre.
I think, to be honest, if you're spending £11,000 a night on a room, I think that's a waste of money, no matter how wealthy you are.
Yeah.
It's just incredibly excessive.
Well, it is excessive, isn't it? Because, I mean, there are people who couldn't find that kind of money to live for a year.
No, that's right.
And you're spending your money on one night. It seems a bit ridiculous.
No.
Neil says this. I'm looking forward to the yoga discussion. We've been doing hot yoga at least 3 times a week for a year now. I've never felt so good.
What on earth is hot yoga?
Hot yoga is when you do yoga in a really, really hot room, like a sauna.
Oh, I see. And
then there's like Bikram yoga, where you do it, I think, in a sauna. And it's, you basically get very, very sweaty while you're doing this amazing yoga exercise.
Okay. Now, listen, we're going over to the States in September.
Yeah, we are.
We're going to do a show in New York City.
Yeah.
And delighted to say that, although we can't mention any names, we've had a discussion with an internationally famous airline about them becoming a partner of ours. So that's rather good, isn't it?
Yeah, it is rather good, yeah.
Now,
I'll tell you something else I've got to tell you about, which I've been meaning to tell you about for a couple of weeks.
Yes.
I only, because I was reminded of it last weekend, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a small sort of what you might call Tesco petrol station stroke sort of supermarket.
Yes, I know.
Not far from where I am in Sussex, right?
Yeah.
And they've recently they've recently put signs up. You know, one's the entry, one's the exit, right?
Yes.
But the exit sign is the wrong way round. Right?
What do you mean? Is it at the entry sign?
Well, no.
At the entry
the entry, when the entry position has, entry written on one side.
Sure.
The exit sign has should have exit written on one side.
On the inside side?
Well, no, on the inside side it should say, thank you for visiting Tesco's, which it says,
yes.
Right? And then on the outside
it should say exit, so nobody drives in.
It should say no entry,
Yeah.
But they put it round the wrong way.
Well, they're idiots.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Yeah.
But why haven't they turned it round? It's driving me mad.
Well, who did you've reported this to the manager of the store?
Well, I haven't yet. No,
well, why not?
Well, because I figure that they must know.
Don't you feel socially responsible to say, look, this could cause a car crash. Some guy could drive in there not knowing it's the exit.
When you look at what is the exit from the road, what you see is thank you for visiting Tesco.
Well, I know, it's ludicrous.
So you might want to drive in thinking that's a welcome sign.
That's what I'm saying. That would cause a crash. You should have reported it to the manager.
Well, it's been like that for 2 weeks now.
Well, why haven't you reported it?
Because I think he might look at me and go, well, yeah, we know that, but I'll be like, why would they just turn it round?
Well, in that case, you go to him and you say, excuse me, I'm sorry to bother you. I presume you know that. And then he'll either say...
I'll do that this weekend.
Yeah, do it. You must see. You've got to be socially responsible.
He must know that it's round the wrong way.
Well, you'd hope so.
But what sort of idiot would do that?
Well,
I mean, I found myself saying to myself, this is the level of workmanship we have in this country.
But supposing it was a workman who'd come from an overseas country.
I don't care.
And didn't have a great command of English.
I don't care. Surely somebody in the place would go out and say, "Oh, you see, you're doing that job. Do you know you're doing it? You don't put it around the wrong way."
That's right.
It's incredible to me, that.
Now, listen, I'll tell you what I want to talk to you about. Do you remember a great song years ago, quite a few years ago, when we'd have been in our early 20s, and it was called Convoy?
Convoy, yes.
You know?
It was a really terrible song.
And it introduced words like rubber duck. And,
yes, it was all about the
10-4 rubber duck.
It was all about what do you call those radios? The radio hams?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the whatever they were called. Anyway, apparently... the age of the American truck driver, and they are iconic American trucks, aren't
they're
they?
massive,
the rigs and all that kind of stuff, is coming to an end very, very rapidly.
Why?
Well, all sorts of reasons, but one of them is that they think that within 5 years, I doubt this could happen, they could be replaced by driverless vehicles.
Really?
That's going to be the main area of technology where the driverless aspect, and you can see it now, can't you? You can see how useful driverless lorries are going to be in huge convoys on those vast American roads.
You'd have to worry about them being hacked or something, wouldn't you?
Well, I suppose they're going to get over all that. But last October, a company called Otto announced it had delivered a cargo of Budweiser beer from Fort Collins, Colorado, to the city of Colorado Springs by self-driving lorry.
Wow.
It drove along an interstate highway through Denver, the driver watching as the wheel turned and the vehicle steered itself through the traffic. 2 million Americans make their living by driving lorries. Incomes have declined rapidly as the industry is deregulated.
Yes. I
Did you know that?
I didn't know it was deregulated.
Yeah.
But I suppose the problem for all of these companies is that as much as online shopping has probably harmed them,
yes.
at the same time they still have to deliver stuff around the country.
Yeah, but that's more local, really, isn't it?
I suppose so.
Yeah.
No, but I mean they've got big warehouses.
Yeah.
You've got to get stuff from one place to another.
It says truckers are under threat. Wages have declined sharply in the past 3 decades. The life has become more lonely and demanding, and the entire profession faces a mortal threat from robots.
Wow. It's CB radios, by the way. Is
CB.
What we're thinking of. There was a film called Convoy, starring Chris Christopherson and Ali McGraw.
That's right. That was the one.
Back in the 70s.
That's right.
79.
10-4, Rubber Duck.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is Talk Sport.
Them Smokies.
I am sailing home again, across the sea. I am sailing stormy waters to be near you, to be free. I am flying.
This is Talk Sport. We are the two mics. There's a lot of stuff on the back page about Arsene Wenger, by the way, this morning.
I'm
I'm
fed up to the back teeth of the Arsene Wenger story.
Well, I wanted to ask you a question about it, though,
go on,
which
then.
is that now that you signed another deal for 2 years,
yes,
we were talking to Sophie Nicolau about this the other night, saying that was probably going to happen. They're now saying to him, you must deliver the Premier League title.
Yes.
How's he going to do that?
Well, it doesn't matter whether he does or not. He's got another 2-year contract worth about how much?
Well, I bet
16 million quid or something?
It'll be approaching 7 to 8 million a year,
yes, that's right. Yes, absolutely.
Because that's pretty much how much he gets.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
Well, I mean, you can't just get the title, can he? I mean, he's a million miles away from it.
Is he? If he buys well over the summer, would that put him in a position where he could come second next year and then champions the year after?
Because have they told him he's got more money than Manchester City, 300 million?
Well,
have they told him that he's going to have more money than Chelsea?
I don't know.
Or Manchester United?
Don't know.
Or Tottenham?
Well, that's a conversation he's had to have with them, isn't it?
That's what I mean. I think it's pie in the sky, isn't it?
That's right, absolutely.
Absolute pie in the sky.
Now, listen, the Champions League final's coming up on Saturday.
Certainly
right?
is. Juventus against Real Madrid.
Real Madrid. It's in Cardiff.
It is.
It's Wales. Gareth Bale's there.
Gareth Bale's there. It would be a great place for him to win it, wouldn't it?
Oh, utterly unbelievable.
Yeah.
The hometown boy comes back and, he's gone and made his fortune in Spain. He comes back and lifts the biggest trophy in football. Unbelievable. But I've been looking at some statistics.
Have you?
About British players and European Cups, because we used to quite dominate it at one time. We've fallen away a bit in the last few years. But what I didn't realise is, it doesn't surprise me at all that Kenny Dalglish has got 3 Champions League medals. Well, they were European Cups in those days. Neither does it surprise me that so has Graham Souness, Alan Hansen, Ray Clements, Ray Kennedy, Terry McDermott. But what does surprise me is Jimmy Case has got 3.
Has he? Yeah. From that period when Liverpool were winning the European Cup every single sort of year.
And I know Jimmy quite well because when Alan Ball sadly died, Jimmy lives down in that part of the world and he played for Southampton towards the end of his career.
Yes.
And of course so did Alan Ball, so they live quite close to each other. And I did a few tribute shows and Jimmy was there with his girlfriend and we sort of got to know each other quite well and used to meet up in London and the South Coast. But
did he live down that way then?
He lived down on the coast. We came to London for work and all that kind of stuff. He was actually a big friend of Paul Breen Turner's as well.
Right.
And he used to stay at Paul Breen Turner's place, in Greenwich.
Okay.
We haven't
heard from Paul for a while.
We haven't heard for a while.
I presume he's still manning the Gibraltar sort of seaways.
Captain Pug washing, yes.
Keeping his eyes clear.
But Jimmy, like a lot of these footballers, you wouldn't know that when you looked at him in a pub and he was holding a pint of beer in his hand and that man had won 3 European Cups. It'd be impossible to work that out. And some of these guys are so humble.
Because I suppose he was not only humble, but not a particularly recognisable face either.
I think he's quite recognisable to me, but I think you're right in terms of profile of footballers.
Yeah, right.
He doesn't look like a footballer these days, like a lot of them don't 20 or 30 years on, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I find that quite astonishing, really, and really, my admiration for him grows, if you see what I mean. Yeah.
Now, Neil has sent us a great picture. 10-4 Rubber Duck, he said. This is my road train, and he's in Saskatchewan. The driverless trucks, he says, will have a driver in the cab. But check out this truck that he's driving.
Let's have a look.
That is so...
Wow.
That is not only an 18-wheeler, I think it's about a 36-wheeler.
Well, just explain this to our listeners. It's got the longest trailer on a what's called the front bit.
The front bit is the tractor, I think.
The tractor.
They call them tractor trailers, don't
Tractor trailers, yeah. It's got the longest trailer, but then it's got a second trailer attached to that.
Yeah.
But you can do that in a huge country like America where the roads are endless and you pull them around. What you can't do is put those sort of vehicles, double trailers and all that, into small English villages.
So can you imagine how difficult that must be to drive?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like physically to drive it.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of those roads out in Canada are just straight roads.
That's right.
And you're probably struggling to stay awake. You're just driving in a straight line.
That's right.
And that's why I guess they could be driverless. But if you had to just even go round a relatively small bend...
Or a roundabout.
In a thing like that.
Yeah.
You'd never be able to go around a roundabout.
Well, you'd have to pull very wide, wouldn't you? Yeah, it's amazing. I totally agree. Absolutely
Horrendous.
amazing. That was a great record, that, I said, let those truckers roll.
Uh-huh.
Oh, no, I said, hit that slammer down or something. What's they call the gas pedal? They, hit the
hammer. Is it the hammer?
Yeah, put that hammer down, because we got a great big convoy burning through the night.
Thank
yes,
you.
we got a great big convoy. Ain't it a beautiful sight? Wonder what the name of that guy was who sung that.
Yeah, no idea.
Yeah.
Patrick says, why am I not surprised to hear that Porky's camera is in his head, considering there's nothing else in there?
That's a bit harsh, isn't it?
That is a bit harsh.
Yeah,
How about this from William? Knew hundreds of people who had Citizens Band Radio, CB,
Yeah.
supposed to have a licence costing 10 quid. Nobody ever got one. Yeah,
Right.
because people had them in their sheds, didn't
They
they?
did, yeah.
And it wasn't just like the... in fact, I seem to remember, and I don't know whether you remember this,
Yes.
but you may, that there was sort of nefarious things going on that was organised on CB
Right,
Radio.
right.
That, people... I seem to remember stories being written
Yeah.
back in the kind of, 80s.
Right.
That people who had these CB radios were arranging all sorts of, illicit liaisons.
Yeah, I see.
In garden sheds all over
Yeah,
the place.
garden sheds,
Truckers would come to certain places because they'd know where to go. And it was all in code and nobody knew what was going on.
I had a pal at the Birmingham Mail when I worked in Birmingham, and I used to sort of work on the news desk there before going to London. And his name was Barry, and he was a really nice lad. He was a real black country boy, from Sandwell,
All right.
something like that. But a really nice lad, really energetic and all that. And he was into this CB,
Right.
and he lived like out in Warwickshire. A lot of people in Birmingham do,
Right.
and every night when he drove home on his CB radio, he was talking to a farmer who had one in his tractor.
Right.
So the monotony of ploughing a field, you see what I mean? What
yeah.
you just said about lorry drivers, of driving up and down. This guy had his radio on all the time.
So could you listen on a band and listen to all the other people talking? I suppose you could, right?
I've no idea how it works, but all I know is Barry saying, I was talking to the farmer last night. He was telling me about the price of corn and, how the potato crops failed and all this kind of stuff. And so for this 15 minutes when he's in this part of the country, just before he got home, he was in touch with the farmer. He was in a field about 4 miles away, ploughing his field. And it used to be like a pretty good... community. It was called community band radio
because you had to be quite close to each other, didn't you?
That's right. Yeah.
So I think you were on a particular wavelength, so you could listen in to what other people were doing if you wished to.
Well, we had a chap here once, and he's not here anymore because I'm afraid he went. What's the word? He went bad. Bad.
Really?
You know what I'm talking about?
Well, it could be a number of ways of going bad.
Yeah, there was financial implications, all sorts of things, yeah. Now, he lived, funny enough, he was a Midlander as well.
Oh, yeah.
And, I got to know him because
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, we went on a few jobs together around, actually, quite a lot of jobs together. We used to follow England around on a sponsorship with the Nationwide Building Society, so we always went with him, and he always came and set stuff up and all that kind of stuff. But... He was a mad fanatic ham radio operator, which is the same sort of thing.
Similar thing, yeah.
Similar sort of thing. And for years, when he was a kid, from the age of about 12 or 13, he would go down to a shed at the bottom of his garden, and then, almost like a telescope, he would open this flap in the roof of the shed.
Oh, yeah.
And he would
very James Bond-esque.
Very James Bond-esque.
Yeah.
And he would wind out this aerial.
Yeah.
Right? This huge aerial. It got up to about like 30 feet.
Really?
And all the neighbours hated it, apparently.
I was going to say, it's a bit sort of
very,
obvious, isn't it?
Very intrusive and all that kind of stuff. And then he'd sit in the... excuse me. Then he'd sit in the shed and he would talk to people all over the world on his ham radio.
Right. What about?
Well, God knows. Now, when he used to go on holiday, he used to go and stay with these people he'd contacted on ham radio, but he'd never met them.
Right.
He didn't know what they were all about.
Yeah.
He didn't know what their social standing was or anything like that,
Right. I suppose it was a sort of very early version of, I don't know, being on a forum with people where
that's right,
you learn that you might have certain things in common, and then at some point or other you might decide you want to meet each other and talk about it.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And you know, the conclusion to all that is that I think actually these people who do it all the time are somewhat saddos in the sense that they're looking for somebody to talk to. They don't quite care who it is.
No, indeed.
You know what I mean?
I think that might be true.
Yeah.
Mike says this, a boat in the Thames that could blow up and be worse than the bomb on Nagasaki. That guy's certifiable.
I thought about that later. It wouldn't be worse than the bomb on Nagasaki,
it would be.
obviously.
No.
But what I'm saying is it would cause a terrific explosion.
A bit of devastation.
Yes, it would, yeah.
I'm sure.
Yes.
And Peter says, I've seen goat yoga, and I reckon it's the kind of thing that happens when a species, i.e. us, not goats, has reached near terminal boredom. That might be true.
Well, it could be true.
So you finally come up with something that they've had to do.
Yeah.
And David says, I agree with Porky. I've had a gutful. Ban all talk of Wenger for the next month at least.
No, absolutely.
I don't mind that.
I mean, he's still there. He's not my club anyway, but God, the debate's been going on for at least 6 months now.
Yeah.
And
probably 6 years.
Yeah, but on this particular contract, so I don't want to know. Honestly, just forget it. You know, I'm got a I've got the slightest interest in that at all.
I've got an answer for you here. David says C.W. McCall sang the song Convoy.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
C.W. McCall.
I'll see if we can find it, maybe.
I said, put that hammer down.
Yeah.
Because we got a great big convoy.
Yeah, all right. I don't want you to sing it. I want him to sing it. We'll find it.
Got a great big
find it.
convoy.
For heaven's sake.
Oh, what a beautiful sight.
This is Talk Sport.
Looks like we've got us a convoy. It was the dark of the moon on the 6th of June in a Kenworth pulling logs. Cab over Pete with a reefer on and a Jimmy hauling hogs. We was heading for Bear on I-10 about a mile out of Shaky Town. I says, Pigpen, this here's a rubber duck and I'm about to put the hammer down.
'Cause we got a little convoy rocking through the night. Yeah, we got a little convoy, ain't she a beautiful sight?
What year was this, do you reckon? The movie was 79. So it must have been a bit earlier than that.
Oh, much earlier. That record came. I remember I was playing five-a-side for the Chester Chronicle one night in a bitingly cold D-side where Michael Owen used to play.
Okay.
And
some years before him, though.
Oh, yeah, some years before him. So that must have been 75.
Yeah.
Or 76.
Yes, I think you're probably right.
75, 76.
Yeah.
And the reason I remember is one of the senior lads at the Chester Chronicle, who was in the advertising department, had a Chronicle company car, which was a Hillman Hunter, which was quite a flash car.
That was quite a flash car. Had a bit of a fast back look to it.
Yeah, that's right. It did, yeah. And what happened was we got in the car to get back to Chester to have a drink after this freezing cold night of playing five-a-side, and that record was on the radio, you know, and I remember thinking, what a strange record.
You never actually bought it, though, did you?
No, I never bought
Thank
it.
God for that.
No.
To me, it was one of those kind of novelty records, really.
Do you think, talking about records,
by
the way, talking about records, because we talked the other night about Ed Sheeran having 16 positions in the top 20 in American all that kind of stuff, wouldn't you like, if somebody said to you, look, this new bar's opening in town, and its unique feature is it's got a jukebox. I would go to that pub.
Would you?
I love jukeboxes.
Not particularly, no.
I love jukeboxes.
No. I mean, if you go to America, you can still go to diners where they have the jukebox, not the big jukebox by the door,
but the slide
the
thing
side one where you can sit at a table and pick a song.
That's right, yes.
They still have that.
Yes, that's right, yeah. Well, in New York City, there were loads of pubs with jukeboxes.
There were, yeah.
You know the Brick Cafe we used to go to down at the end of your street?
Yeah, the Bank Cafe.
Bank Cafe, that's right. They had a fantastic jukebox.
Did they? I don't remember the one in there.
Yeah, they did, yeah. And the one I'm talking about was where you pushed a button and the thing just slid over and then slid over and then slid over.
Well, I don't know whether because there's a revolution or sort of resurrection of vinyl, people have started doing it again.
Yeah.
Because one of the things I haven't seen in vinyl, I must say, is singles. I mean, there's a lot of albums being reproduced now, but singles you don't see very much.
No, that's absolutely true. But I do wish they'd bring those back, because I think the freedom of choice to say, because you get pipe music in lots of pubs these days. I sit sometimes in pubs in Surrey, if I've got a day off, I go and read the papers, and I walk over there and sit there, and you get pipe music, and they're quite pleasant tunes, and they're not outrageous or anything, but it'll be somebody's playlist, won't it, probably? Yeah, that's right, it will be, you're absolutely right. But I'd rather, say, there's a jukebox, and funny enough, I used to go to a pub at the bottom of Sutton, where I used to live, and it was an absolute, honestly, tip. It was one of those pubs where every Friday and Saturday night, the hard metal greaser bands, who used to ride around on motorbikes
right.
and these, rambling old trucks
Yeah.
used to turn up, get all their gear out, get onto a rackety old stage and just, play as loud music as you could. That's what they did Friday and Saturday.
Yeah.
For the rest of the week, the place was almost deserted.
Right.
Because there was no furniture in it. It was hopeless. But what it had was this magnificent jukebox.
Yeah.
So I would sometimes walk down there, and the minute I walked in, they said, we know what you're after and all that. I would order a couple of glasses of wine, which came out of a 1 litre bottle of wine bought at Tesco's or somewhere.
Right. They just held it behind the bar?
They just held it behind the bar, and I'd go, sit over in the corner. I'd say, you all right? I said, yeah, just do a shout, you want another one? And then they knew what I was going to do, and I'd go up to the jukebox and I'd put on 20 Beatles records.
Right.
And that was it. And the great thing about it was,
Wasn't it playing when you got there, though?
Sorry?
Wasn't it playing when you got there?
No, it wasn't.
So
this is
you were
the
the only
whole
person putting
point.
money into it.
So, but the great thing about it was, sometimes you can get frustrated because you might put your collection of 6 on, but then somebody else comes in and somebody else gets president.
Yes.
No, on this one, when you put your 20 records on, all 20 got played before anybody else.
Bonkers.
Well, it did. People used to complain. I used to tell them to push off.
Right.
I said, well, you should have got here earlier.
Such a pleasant pack.
Yeah, you should have got here earlier, mate. One guy, not the Beatles again. I said, yeah, the Beatles. And I said, what do you do for a
people
job?
listening to this show.
No, I said, I remember this guy distinctly. I said, what do you do for a job, mate?
Right.
He said, I'm a window cleaner. I said, a window cleaner? I said, a window cleaner? I said, that's about the least talent in the world you need is to be a window cleaner.
That's very hard.
And I said, and what you're listening to here are 4 of the genii of the second half of the 20th
You're lucky
century.
he didn't stick his ladder somewhere it would have hurt.
He was quite old, actually. So I would have.
So you were just being horrible to a guy because you knew he wasn't going to be able to fight back.
Yeah, that's about it, yeah.
Shocking.
And I said, you take your ladder, mate, and you shove it. I said, because, next time you complain about this, I'll have you thrown out.
Very charming.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Charming.
Yeah.
Now, how about this from William? He says, favourite spot for CB radio in the northwest because of the altitude was the ITV transmitter at Winter Hill in Horwich, Lancashire.
Yes, that's right, Winter Hill. Yeah, Horwich. Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And here's one from Andrew who says that he's actually found a copy of a YouTube clip in which William Shatner is singing Convoy.
William Shatner?
Yeah.
What, Captain Kirk?
That's him.
He turned out to be a very sort of amiable sort of character when he finished playing.
He's a fantastic character,
Exactly, yeah. And did all sorts of things.
And he's recorded all kinds of... Well, his recording of Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds is something to be said.
Yeah, it is,
Something to be said for that.
Yeah.
Steve says this, at last, I'm a milkman and keep on at people to make sure fridges' temperature dials are adjusted in the summer as they work harder. So that's what I was telling you earlier, that, people actually should adjust the temperature dial.
Well, do you know what? That's a great piece of advice because nobody ever thinks about their dial, do they, inside their fridge? So what do you do? Do you put it up or put it down?
Well, you're supposed to put it up, basically, make it colder.
Yeah.
You want to if you make it colder on the inside.
Yeah, I see. Yeah,
then it will keep the food fresher, basically.
So you put it.
So you make it colder.
Increase the minus factor.
Yes,
that's
I would
right.
say.
Yes,
I would say you turn it up effectively because turning up a fridge makes it colder.
Yes, I understand.
Rather than turning it down.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what you should do.
Yeah.
Steve says I also only sell butter, and along with Porky, I've always said it's better for you than margarine.
Yeah, of course it is. Margarine is like axle grease. You're putting that inside your body. I'd much rather have butter, made from fresh dairy produce from cows.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Gift says Porky's iTunes playlist must be torture. Technology has passed him by. Well, we're going to work on that, actually. Your iTunes playlist. We're going to work on that because you haven't got an iTunes playlist, but you might have a Spotify one.
Well, I'm going to get a Spotify one, but what I need to know is, so I switch on my new smart TV, and I want Spotify, so what do I do next?
Well, what you're going to do is look for the apps area. There's like an app, there'll be a place where it says apps, right? And you go into that and you look for the Spotify app.
Oh.
And then you download the Spotify app.
Yes.
And then you open up the Spotify app.
Yes.
As if it were on a computer.
And you do all this on your television control
you do,
thing?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
You just move the remote around.
Oh, this is brilliant.
And it's a couple of clicks away, and then suddenly you've got it there. Then you'll probably have to start an account, which means that you'll have to sign up for it.
Yes.
Which means you'll probably have to put in your email address and a password. And then you give them some form of payment because it will be about £5 a month or something like that.
That's brilliant.
And then you basically just listen to whatever you want.
That is absolutely excellent. Do you know what? With my new smart TV, you don't have to click on anything anymore. You just point.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? And like, for instance, so if I'm on telly, it's HDMI 1.
Yes.
But then if you use the DVD, it's HDMI 2.
Okay.
So,
and you'll have about 2 or 3 others you can use
that's
as
right.
well.
Yeah, it's about half a dozen.
Yeah.
So what the guy said to me was, he said, look, when you finish watching your DVD, he said, your screen will revert back to your selection of sources,
right?
You know, to come to
and then
the
you
source
can watch
button.
regular TV or whatever.
Now, in my old one, you had to sort of click up and down. On this one, you just point, and like a pink petal lands on the one you want to do next.
Okay.
And you just press your
And you
button
just click.
and you're on that, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, the advance is quite remarkable.
Oh, fantastic.
I can't imagine what it's going to be next.
Yes.
You know, it might be something that you just, like, literally, sort of stick to the wall.
Yeah.
But it's so light.
Yes.
That you can move it around.
Well, I think that's absolutely right. And as for my, what's it called? I've forgotten. It's my boom box, is it?
Or a sound bar.
A sound bar?
Yeah.
Utterly fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like being in a
You
cinema.
haven't upset the neighbours yet.
No, I don't, because I'm very...
Isn't that where the copper is down in Gosport? You got a
next door.
Yeah, so you don't want to be upsetting him, do
No, I
you?
won't be upsetting him at all. No, he's a bit in awe of me. He's found out who I am now, so
really?
he's okay, yeah.
He's not much of a policeman, is he?
Yeah.
It's
Sorry?
taken 4 years to find out who you are.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Perhaps he's not
He's
a
not
detective.
working for the detective squad,
Yeah, perhaps
is he?
he's not a detective in homicide. Yeah, absolutely.
Here's one from Gaza. He says, now I know how Derek from Pencoed feels. He says, I'm a window cleaner.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, well,
You
window
might
cleaners
wish
are
to
good
take it
people.
back.
Window cleaners are good people. In fact, there's, I might, in, a forthcoming Porky Vision, just stray into the Coronation Street area because Rosie, who, in real life is the very beautiful actress married to the boy Sinclair, the Celtic footballer.
Oh, yes. Yeah,
Scott Sinclair.
The girl Helen, you mean, from
Helen
from Coronation
Flanagan.
Street.
Helen Flanagan from
Yeah.
Coronation. Absolutely beautiful lady.
Yeah.
And she went away from Coronation Street for, a couple of years, I think, and then they brought her back because she was the sister who went
Well,
to
they obviously
London
missed her, right?
and did modelling and all that, and then that all collapsed on her, and she come back. But she actually helps out her stepfather with his window cleaning business because
Really?
he's had an accident or something.
You mean in real life or in Coronation
No,
Street?
in Coronation Street.
Oh, I was going to say, I can't really imagine her up a ladder.
And she's clambering up and down ladders
Really?
in high heels and like fashion design jumpsuits. It's
Really?
a ludicrous plot, yeah.
Well, that's ridiculous.
But
They think they're exploiting her sexuality.
Well, they are definitely, because
Yeah.
they get lots of shots of her posterior
That's
going
what I
up
mean.
and down a ladder. You
That's
know what
shocking.
I mean?
Was it carry on up the
Well,
Coronation Street?
I don't know. There's an
Benny Hill kind of scenario.
There's an awful lot of,
What's
Roger.
going on with television?
Well, you know what I told you the other night about the Grantchester and the vicar and
Yeah.
all that? I mean, I didn't even have time to tell you that in between all this about the vicar, consorting with a married woman and Rogerisation, and the policeman having horizontal refreshment with the girl secretary from the police. What I forgot to tell you was, or I didn't have time, was that the case they're investigating was a lecturer from Girton College, Cambridge, an all-woman college, in which they've discovered he'd been Rogerising at least 5 of his pupils.
Blimey.
At least 5.
That's shocking.
Yeah, I mean, it's not against the law because they're over age, obviously, and all that, but it's
not very ethical, is it?
Well, I must say, it's not part of the...
It's not part of the curriculum.
Not part of the manual of Good Teaching Guide.
No.
Unless you believe Good Teaching Guide includes a bit of the old... How's your father?
No, I don't think it should.
No.
Absolutely not. No, it was a bit shocking a couple of weeks ago because my youngest son actually came down from upstairs.
What was this?
While I was watching Versailles.
Oh, Versailles, yeah.
And we had to cover his eyes because we said, well, this is a bit sort of historical. You might quite enjoy this.
I totally
agree.
agree.
And I hadn't really seen much of it.
I totally agree.
And he was quite liking some of the pictures of Versailles, the outside of Versailles. It's a very, impressive looking building. All the water features
Certainly
and
is,
all of that, and all the stuff that was going on inside.
Yeah.
And then suddenly there was this incredibly sort of what can only be described as graphic sex scene.
Yes.
Which he's really not old enough to see.
No.
And
I think children are very well versed in this sort of thing very early
but there was
in life
no
now,
disguising what was going on. I mean,
Yeah.
it was ridiculous.
Yeah,
so,
that's right.
His big sister just put her hand over his face
Yes.
to stop him watching it.
Yeah, well, I should hope so as well.
Absolutely shocking.
I should hope
shocking.
so. Yes.
This is Talk Sport.
That's the national anthem of Paraguay.
Very good.
Thank you.
You guessed that, didn't you?
No, I didn't. No,
Yeah, you did.
no, I knew.
Yeah,
I know.
by a process of elimination.
No. I know all the national anthems of all the countries in the world.
Do you?
Yes. At school, I was known as Britannica because of my extensive knowledge.
Why do you keep saying werewolf?
Because that's how I pronounce werewolf.
Well, it's not werewolf.
It is werewolf.
It's werewolf.
It's not. Michael Jackson's video was werewolf.
No, it's not W-E-I-R. It's W-E-R-E.
Yes, I know. That's werewolf.